Reincarnation Paradise, Chapter 201. Time is up, the derivative world, Akame is opened, there is no abnormality in this world, the space coordinates are stable, the power of time and space consumes 0.018 ounces. According to the power of time is consumed, the lowest evaluation for contractors needs to reach D+ level in this world. Susiao stood in the same place, he had given up resistance. Boom, the feeling of being hit by a stick on the back of his head appeared. After transmitting for several times, Susiao was used to this feeling. When he regained consciousness, Susiao was already in the world of snow and ice, the cold wind was blowing through the snow. He subconsciously shivered. The snow flew in the sky, the cold wind penetrated the bone like a knife. At this time, the temperature was at least 40 degrees below zero. Even Susiao couldn't stay for too long at this temperature, the cold wind was eroding his body heat. It's f***ing cold. The trembling sound came not far away, Susiao looked at the side. There were more than a dozen contractors nearby. Stay close to me, I am a fire sorcerer. An old man with a sorcerer robe lifted his staff while trembling. Huh. The fireball, which was as big as a washbowl, appeared. Dozens of contractors rushed over like hungry dogs that saw food. We're finally getting warmer. Is the system trying to freeze us? Thank you, man. A strong man curled himself up with both hands. This guy was covered with metal armor, his cold resistance was very low. We're poor people who are struggling to survive. You're welcome. The old sorcerer smiled very kindly, he also put his hand on the strong man's shoulders while he was talking. The guy over there, don't you want to come? The old sorcerer greeted Susiao. Thank you, no need. Susiao did not feel kindness on the person. Instead, he felt he was the same kind people. Then see you next time, we don't bother each other. The old sorcerer still smiled gently. Susiao noticed different information in that smile. Do not bother each other, do not interfere with each other. Looking at the contractors far away, Susiao put his hands in front of his mouth and breathed hot air. The place he entered, the derivative world, was very unfriendly. It was actually frost soil. Entering the world, Akame kill. World difficulty, LV.8. Extremely difficult. The source of the world, 0%, it will grow when the hunter explores or communicates with the characters in the current world, it will be calculated with the difficulty of the tasks when the world is settled, and form the final score. World instruction, 48 pieces of Taigo, the changes of the empire, Jaegers, night raid, human experiments, the decaying empire of 1,000 years. The collision of the sword and the knife, the confrontation of the Taigo, the choice of good and evil, the cycle of killing and peace. Taigo, about 1,000 years ago, in order to maintain long-term dominion, the first emperor of the empire raised enormous money and power beyond imagination, and gathered the top craftsmen all over the world to use the super dangerous items as the materials, the rare metals such as orichalcos, and a large number of lost secret techniques to develop 48 pieces of unreplicable weapons which called Taigo. Main mission, Supreme Taigo. Hunting mission, cleaning up offender No. 113. Contractor. When the hunter comes near the offender within 1 kilometer, the hunting function will be automatically turned on. Warning, do not mention anything about the reincarnation paradise in this world. If the warning is invalid, you will be executed forcibly. Tip, it is detected that the hunter does not master the language in this world, you will consume 100 paradise coins to master the language of this world automatically. The world start. Susiao saw the No. 113. Offender of the hunting mission, he felt not good. Reincarnation paradise, what is going on? Susiao's question was related to the hunting mission, the reincarnation paradise immediately replied. The official number of the offender is 113. It has any errors, the hunting function is detecting, the hunting function is normal, please actively complete the hunting task. Su Xiao scowled, there was such a special number, there must be something. Su Xiao looked at the mainline task. Mainline mission, Supreme Taigu. Difficulty level, LV.8. Mission instruction, getting the key to the Supreme Taigu. Mission information, Emperor's power is the strongest emperor, and the current holder is the Imperial Emperor. Mission period, 30 natural days. Mission reward, 4 points of the attribute, 12,000 paradise coins. Mission penalty, full attribute 3. Su Xiao tightened his collar. He still didn't know where he was. How to complete the main task still had to be researched. Su Xiao tended to join the Empire side. From the original plot, if he joins to the night raid, it will be not easy to get the key of Supreme Taigu. If he follows the normal process, he will have the opportunity to get the key after defeating the little emperor, and it just has a chance. Would the night raid let him take the key of Supreme Taigu? The answer was no, they would be likely to fight with him. Su Xiao was not a regular person. He intended to get into the Empire camp. Although the Empire camp would ultimately lose, this result was irreversible, this was public opinion. There would not have many contractors to join the Empire camp, but there would be many of them to join the night raid camp. The power of the Revolutionary Army in the original plot was stronger than the Empire. More than 70% of the ministers in the Empire were recruited by the Revolutionary Army. Su Xiao was ready to sneak into the top position of the Empire, finding an opportunity to approach the little emperor, and directly getting the key. The competition for the main mission was fierce, the key was only one, the contractors were a lot. Interesting, all contractors grab a key, then see who would be faster, but I am more used to cut other people's hands. He shivered in the cold wind again. Su Xiao took out a compass which he purchased in the trading market. It was said that it was useful in many derivative worlds. After distinguishing the direction, Su Xiao went to the south. If he guesses right, the current position is in the extreme north, the direction of the Empire is in the south. Crack, crack. Su Xiao left a line of footprints on the thick snow, the figure gradually disappeared into the blizzard. The mission period was 1 month, Akame-ga-Kill world was obviously different from the Titan world. Walking in the blizzard, Su Xiao began to feel weak after traveling for an hour and even felt dizzy, this was a symptom of losing excessive body heat. Taking some food contained high calories to get his strength back, Su Xiao continued to move forward. Reincarnation paradise would not send him to this for no reason. After traveling for about 2 hours, Su Xiao felt that the temperature slightly improved. The current temperature was about 30 degrees below zero, it was still freezing, but there was no danger of being frozen at any time. A strong wind blew, large pieces of snow flew all over the sky. Su Xiao blocked his hand in front. He vaguely saw a high building in the distance in the blizzard. You have entered the edge area in the extreme north. The hint of the reincarnation paradise appeared, Su Xiao became excited and walked quickly to the edge area. After walking toward, Su Xiao discovered that what he had seen before was not a towering building, but a city wall. The wall was built by black stone stood in the blizzard, the surface of the wall was pitted, it looked like it had not been renovated for hundreds of years. From this wall, he could see how decayed the empire was, the borderline was not even repaired. This wall was responsible for blocking the alien from the north. Don't know what's the timing right now. It is not difficult to join the Empire camp at that time. Su Xiao walked close to the city wall under the blizzard. Chapter 202. Edge area in the extreme north. This fortress was the important way of the northern border of the empire. Both sides of the fortress were yakel that were not melted all year round. The rock wall was steep, the yakel could not be boarded in many ways except for flying. The harsh climate in the extreme north led the place was lack of resources. People living in the extreme north could only live by hunting. The customs passed down from generation to generation led the people here were fierce, everyone was a soldier. The extreme north originally belonged to the empire, the high tax of the empire led to the extreme north to leave the empire's control. The people in the extreme north who struggled on the food could not afford that kind of tax, it was inevitable that they left. The empire, which was located in the most prosperous position in the center of the mainland, certainly could not tolerate this thing, sending the army to suppress the extreme north. In the empire's view, the extreme north was only a remote place. As long as hundreds of thousands of troops were sent, they could easily kill them and also shock other aliens. Would the people in extreme north who were hunting for a living all year round have weak combat power? Of course not. The 200,000 soldiers the empire sent collapsed in a month. The war between 30,000 and 200,000 seemed ridiculous, but the extreme north got a great victory. After the war, a key figure appeared in the extreme north. Numa Sika, known as the alien prince of the extreme north, had never lost with a long spear. He was a figure like a totem in the extreme north, was also the leader of the extreme north army. The 200,000 armies that empire sent, only 70,000 survived. The rest of them would stay in this frozen land forever. The empire had never had this kind of loss for hundreds of years. The small emperor of the empire, who was underage, was furious and sent 500,000 soldiers and the trump card of the empire. At this time, the 500,000 soldiers of the empire settled in the fortress in the extreme north, but the situation was not as optimistic as they expected. The soldiers from the empire who were accustomed to a warm climate lost a lot of members before the war after they had reached the extreme north. Serious frostbite and heavy cold were like a death god that took their lives. Although the medical treatments of the empire were developed, it was not popularized because the emperor was fatuous. Only the people with a high position in the empire could enjoy excellent medical treatment. Because of the existence of Taiguo, the empire did not care about the hot weapons, so the wars still used cold weapons today. Of course, this also had a relationship with the useless emperor. In the eyes of higher ups of the empire, soldiers were just pieces that could be thrown after using. It was very inappropriate to give them expensive hot weapons. The army of 500,000 soldiers rushed to the extreme north. The combat power they could play no more than 200,000. This number was still decreasing with time passing. On the wall of the edge area in the extreme north, a group of soldiers with white winter clothes routinely patrolled. This stupid place is so cold. When can I go back? A soldier tightened the winter clothes, but even the thicker winter clothes could not block the cold wind in the extreme north. Let's finish it faster, go back to get warmer, the entire wall has been checked, no miss. Another soldier spoke. This was a team of more than a dozen people. It seems like someone is standing under the fortress. A soldier stood on the edge of the wall and looked down. The alien in the extreme north. The snow is too much. I can't see it. He's not like an alien. Have you seen an alien with the unlined garment? This guy is surprisingly not frozen to death. He should not be weak. Let's ask more people to check. Several soldiers asked the others and rushed to the gates. They did not dare to relax because they had a very strict general. The gates opened and dozens of soldiers with long weapons rushed out of the fortress. Who is it? A soldier screamed. The blizzard blew harshly. In this cold temperature, the person with the unlined garment breathed out white air. I don't know if the fortress in the extreme north is still recruiting people. I am a traveler. The person had short black hair and a long sword on his waist. Although the long sword was not gorgeous, you could tell that it was not a normal product at first glance. The small leader among the soldiers pondered for a few seconds. Let's catch him first. He may be a spy from the extreme north army. Now it is wartime, we must not relax. The small leader screamed. Hundreds of soldiers surged toward. The feet stepped on the snow made sounds. Su Xiao, who was surrounded by the group, frowned. The reincarnation park did not provide identity this time. so he could only cover by the identity of the traveler. Su Xiao had already thought of a status that was similar to his temperament. He would wait until he saw the leaders of these soldiers. Sure enough, joining the Empire camp is not that simple. Dragon Flash was taken out, and Su Xiao was ready to fight with the Empire army. Wait. A female voice came. All the soldiers' movements stopped, their bodies were subconsciously stiff. A figure with a white military uniform came from the blizzard. The style of the military uniform was very special, abnormally sexy. This was a tall woman, with the blue hair spread over her back to her waist. The strong wind blew the blue hair. The woman dressed like that in the extreme north. Looking from the dressing, the woman should be a female general. What happened? The general's tone was not so good. It seemed that she had encountered unpleasant things before. General Esteth, I may have discovered the spy of the extreme north army. The little leader looked respectful and lowered his hand. A spy? Esteth looked at Su Xiao. Well, it should be, I just doubt it. After all, it is wartime. The small leader told her the previous situation and did not contain personal emotions. Well done, although we regained the fortress, we can't relax. Thank you for your praise, General. Getting the praise from Esteth, the little leader was happy and retreated to the side respectfully. So, what should we do with you, the spy of the extreme north army? Esteth looked at Su Xiao with anger and pulled out the fine sword at the waist. If I say that I am not a spy, you will not believe me no matter what. Ha! Esteth rushed toward with the sword. The figure was extremely fast. Su Xiao's sights were sharp. He raised his hand and put Dragon Flash in front of him. Ding! The sparkles splashed high, the long sword and the fine sword intersected, the falling snow was blown away by force. Interesting, you actually blocked it. Esteth's lips were tilted, the ice flame seemed to be burning in her eyes. She was a sadism queen who would be very excited after meeting strong enemies. So, can you block this? Esteth had a row of ice blades in front of her without warning. The ice blades stretched rapidly and stabbed towards Su Xiao. Su Xiao was now fighting with Esteth. The sudden appearance of the ice blade didn't surprise him much. Su Xiao's battle experience was so rich that he had already reacted at the moment when the ice blade just appeared. He moved aside, Dragon Flash in his hand moved, which both blocking Esteth's sword and crushing those ice blades by the blade point. After a sound, the ice blades cracked open, the ice was splashing. Su Xiao lifted his foot to kick a large amount of snow to cover Esteth's sight, and sided to kick Esteth's waist. Boom! Su Xiao felt his calf was numb. He kicked on a hard object. Crack! The ice wall that appeared suddenly had a large crack, which made Esteth's expression slightly changed. This power! Esteth was even more excited. She was eager to fight against a strong enemy. Now she met one. At this time, a sharp blade broke through the snow. The sharp edge made Esteth not dare to look down. She had to attack. Otherwise, she would be at a disadvantage, or she may even die. After making a judgment in her mind, Esteth pulled up an ice wall which was half-meter thick. The ice wall rose, but Su Xiao's blade did not stop. Crack! The ice wall, which was half-meter thick, was cut off directly. Esteth had taken the opportunity to retreat. Esteth folded her hands, and her fingertips shone white light. Weissschnabel! Dozens of white ice thorns appeared around Esteth. These ice thorns were abnormally sharp. Chapter 203. Although I don't know where are you from, you're a good subordinate. Esteth waved her arms, and dozens of ice thorns rushed forward rapidly. Su Xiao's pupils contracted slightly as he began to capture the tracks of those ice thorns. Dragon Flash in his hands cut incessantly. The ice thorns that flew to him were smashed constantly. Su Xiao felt that Esteth was very strong. She was stronger than any enemy he had ever fought. She had a lot of nonsense during battle. If they fight seriously, the two are likely to die together. He had a way to deal with the skill of freezing space. Looking at Esteth in front of him, Su Xiao suddenly thought that if he wanted to promote quickly in the empire to approach the little emperor, Esteth was a good opportunity. You win, I am your subordinate now. Su Xiao's words made Esteth stunned. Are you kidding me? This kind of combat can't satisfy me. Esteth was obviously somewhat unhappy. It doesn't matter if there is an army attack in the rear. An army. Esteth stopped the action which was ready to rush forward. She just loved to kill, not irrational. Su Xiao was half squatting and inserted his finger into the snow. 1, 3, 5, or so. When Esteth heard Su Xiao's words, she smiled. 5 people are an army. Even if 5,000 people come, it doesn't matter. That's a bad excuse. I suddenly don't want to accept you as my subordinate. Su Xiao looked up at Esteth. If it is 50,000. Esteth looked sideways at the aide-de-camp. Is there any news from the enemy? The aide-de-camp immediately shook his head. General, the spy in front, has no news. Boom, bang. The ground was still slightly trembling. A large piece of black figures came in front, could be seen vaguely through the blizzard in the distance. Return to the fortress. Esteth immediately took the man back to the fortress. You come as well. After that, Esteth rushed up to the wall. Su Xiao put up the dragon flash and followed a lot of soldiers. According to the information in the original book, joining Esteth's army was a good choice. Although Esteth was a female general with nice body shape, she had a tendency to abuse and torture the enemies, but Esteth had a high reputation in the military. The money that the empire rewarded to Esteth was used to reward the soldiers by her. She had meals with the ordinary soldiers. As usual, she had no habit of receiving private attention. The army under Esteth was not the same as others in the empire. She never accepted bribes. She had a good relationship with the civilians. Her reputation in the empire was extremely high. If Esteth raises the flag to rebel, the success rate will be over 90% or even higher. Excluding the habit of torturing the enemies and loving to kill, these 2 points, Esteth was the field commander with top talent. The decaying empire could support until now. The great reason was relying on the troops contained hundreds of thousands of members under Esteth. Of course, it could not rule out that the empire got many Taigu. The huge sound gradually approached from the distance. Several rows of soldiers have already stood on the city wall at this time. Some of these soldiers were sick. Although their spirits were dropping, they will still fight to the last breath. How could so many enemies appear? Is the information wrong? Esteth stood on the wall and stared far away. The shadows that were rushing in the distance gradually approached. After seeing the shadow clearly, the soldiers on the wall screamed. Snow wolves, didn't these dangerous species go extinct? A lot of wolves were in their sights. The wolf's hair was white, the size was as big as a tiger, the white tusk was exposed while they run. They seemed fierce. It turned out to be like this. It seems that the extreme North Army has reached a consensus with this cunning beast. Esteth whispered. She was born in the northern border area. She knew something about the situation here. General, will we fight? Esteth's aide-de-camp asked. No need. I was wondering how the extreme North Army suddenly dared to invade. It seems that the beast has given the extreme North Army confidence. Esteth was more interested in watching the many giant wolves below. You follow me? Esteth looked at Su Xiao. Su Xiao hesitated for a few seconds and nodded. This should be some kind of test. Joining the Empire camp was not as simple as imagination. His transmission location was too shitty. Esteth asked the aide-de-camp for a few words. The aide-de-camp was a little stunned, and said in a hurry. General, this person's background is unknown. It is too risky. It's okay, as long as he is strong, my army will accept it. If he has intentions, he will be thrown into the fire after being peeled. As Death turned to look at Susiao, the gaze seemed to be studying where to cut first. Susiao was motionless. After watching Susiao for a while, as Death rushed for a few steps and jumped from the wall of a dozen meters high. As soon as she landed, she made an ice layer under her feet. After she stepped on the ice layer, she landed smoothly. As Death tapped on the snow field with one hand. Boom! A layer of firm ice was spreading instantly. The giant wolves that were running all stopped and turned into ice sculptures. Seeing this scene didn't surprise Susiao, as Death's development direction was to fight the army, he was to kill powerful individuals. Susiao also jumped from the wall and stood on the ice. A cold air gradually rose, the temperature here was lower. The extremely cold weather in the north was very suitable for a Death to fight. The combat power of killing tens of thousands of enemies by one attack was shocking enough. Let's go. As Death got up and walked to the distance, and Susiao also went along. Susiao, who walked through ice sculptures formed by giant wolves, had doubts. Where would Death go? These giant wolves obviously had purposes. You just did not do your best, right? As Death suddenly spoke, Susiao guessed that she wanted to investigate his background. After all, his background was unknown. If he does not talk about the details, the plan of sneaking will basically fail. Fortunately, Susiao thought about a lot of things. He had already simulated the background, experiences, and so on earlier. About 70%. As Death was in front, Susiao was behind, the two walked and talked. 70%? It seems that I have looked down on you a little. The guys like you will not come out suddenly. If you want to join my army, you should tell me your background and name. Okay. My name is Byakuya, I'm from Pakistan from the Eastern Empire. I have recently been a killer and a mercenary. I have been trained in the Eastern Organization. And served in the military for a few years later. I was mainly responsible for assassinating important people, destruction after the war, killing the enemy's leader and so on. I served in the army for 5 years, then the army was ready to kill me, that's it? As Death frowned, she thought that Susiao's origins were somewhat complicated. He had been a killer and staying in an assassination unit in the army. Why did your army give up on you? I know too many secrets. And my country has already won, they no longer need me. As Death was thinking whether Susiao's words were credible. Although Susiao's origins were somewhat complicated, Susiao's strength was high, strong people were suspected without complicated origins. What is your purpose for coming to the extreme north? I was going to rely on the Numasika of the extreme north army, but I feel that the guy was useful, so I want to rely on the more powerful empire. Susiao's words were simple and clear, as Death did not take the initiative to ask questions. He never said one more. This was the style that the people in the assassination unit spoke. Susiao was trying to simulate. What purpose will you have after joining the empire? Or what ideas do you have? As Death asked the last question. Ideas. The purpose I was trained is to kill people. Give me money, status, and then I will kill. When she heard that Susiao's somewhat straight answer, Death was satisfied. She felt that this time, she was lucky. A homeless former member of the assassination unit, this kind of people would be very popular in any chaotic country. What they could do was that soldiers could never do. Chapter 204. Your words are reliable for a while. You will be a soldier in the empire after doing one thing with me. But if I find that you have any purposes, I will kill you personally. As Death spread cold airs. Oh. Susiao's answer was very plain, it seemed that he had been used to stay in dangers. At this time, Susiao sighed in his mind, it turned out that being arrogant was so tiring, but this was the fastest way to join the empire. Susiao also found one thing. Some female characters in the anime were somewhat different from his previous understanding. It was like a Death in front of him. She was a madwoman who was a sadist and aggressive. The level of fierceness was not lower than Susiao. It was a dream to let this kind of woman follow his words. He may be able to kill us death, it was impossible to let her be his subordinate. Once he joined the Empire camp and met those female characters like Leonie and Akame from Night Raid, they would basically fight for life. This was the difference between the positions. Wanting to date with girls in the Akame ga Kill world was a dream. Those beauties like Esteth and Akame were the generals or killers that national machine training. They all had their own beliefs. It was a daydream to change their beliefs. Crack, crack, Susiao and Esteth walked in the snow field. Don't you be curious about where we are going? Esteth looked at Susiao sideways. I'm not curious. If other people pretend to be a member of assassination unit, they may be found out by Esteth, but Susiao, who was full of bloody smell, was suitable with the temperament of the assassination unit. Good quality. Which country's assassination troop trained you? Susiao didn't speak, but Esteth in front smiled. If you don't want to say this, then my previous words will be invalid, you can't join the Empire. Esteth's beautiful pupils flashed. Okay, then forget it. Susiao's footsteps stopped and turned around to go in the opposite direction. Just kidding, don't be so serious. Esteth stood in the same place, but Susiao's footsteps did not stop. In fact, the assassination unit was similar to the spy in the real world. As an assassination unit, nothing could be said. This was the iron law from the past to now. Susiao, who stayed in the underground world before, knew this. It's still the same as I said before, help me do one thing, then you are the member of the assassination unit in the Empire, my direct subordinate. This time Susiao's footsteps stopped. Okay. Susiao breathed a sigh of relief, sounding out was everywhere, he should be careful in the future. The two walked in the snow field, the cold wind was freezing, but Esteth looked, as usual, it seemed that her taiga could ignore the cold climate. Susiao walked behind silently, unless Esteth asked, otherwise he would not take the initiative to speak. Saying too many words may reveal flaws, it would be troublesome to be caught. Esteth was not a reasonable person, although now the situation looked harmonious. Once he got caught, he would die. Don't you want to know our destination? Esteth took the initiative to speak, this casual chat hind a cause to kill. I don't want, but it's best to get to the destination within 3 hours. Otherwise, the cold climate will cause my combat effectiveness to drop. Susiao thought in mind quickly, Esteth might take him to a very dangerous place. It doesn't take so long, it can be reached in half an hour. I used to live in the extreme north when I was a child. There is a kind of super dangerous species called Fenrir. The giant wolves were its descendants. If I guess right that the extreme north army has reached a consensus with the dangerous species, now we have to remove him. After listening to Esteth's words, Susiao was a little upset. The dangerous species in Akame ga Kill world were not weak, and super dangerous species were the best among them. Some strength of the super dangerous species even exceeded Esteth and naturally could use elements of nature. Super dangerous species were similar to Warcraft. The body was powerful. Most of the abilities were manipulating the elements of the natural world. Some could breathe fire, some could control the ice, some of them were so energetic that even if they were killed, the muscles could survive for hundreds of years. The reason why the taiga had supernatural ability was because of these super dangerous species. This trip was dangerous but with high benefits. With Esteth's character, there were only two possibilities for Susiao to come together. First, the super dangerous species Fenrir was too strong, Esteth could not fight alone. Second, Esteth was testing Susiao, not only to test his identity but also to test his purpose. Susiao suspected both, which made him feel a bit upset. The monsters that Esteth could not fight alone, then he may not be able to fight. We arrived. After walking in the snowfield for half an hour, the two came to a cave. The cave was at least 10 meters high. Inside of the cave was dark. The cold wind blew into the cave to make sounds. Can you perceive the situation inside? Esteth pulled out the thin sword from her waist and looked straight into the cave seriously. There should be a creature, I'm not sure. Su Xiao perceived the situation in the cave. The creature in the cave was somewhat strange. The creature could sometimes be perceived and sometimes could not. You can only perceive these. It is 4 meters high and about 7 meters long. The vital signs are not obvious. It is very likely to be dormant. If I deal with the creature alone, I will probably have 40% of the confidence to win. Thought Su Xiao said this, but if Esteth really let him deal with it alone, he would leave immediately. Esteth was testing him, he was also testing Esteth. Even if he could not join the Empire camp, he could also consider joining the night raid. At most the progress of the task was slower. Isn't the vital signs obvious? It shouldn't be wrong. Cover me when I fight with it. Esteth took the lead into the cave, and Su Xiao followed. The development of the situation was smoother than he expected. Esteth did not ask him to fight. Then he must be sincere. After all, no one was stupid. Wait. Su Xiao asked Esteth, and she turned with doubts. If my perception is correct, the creature is sleeping. The way you approach is too direct. According to the creature's strength, I recommend a sneak attack. Sneak attack? Yes, I will sneak in first, and you support me immediately after the battle. Esteth pondered for a while. Do you have confidences? I have. Su Xiao's direct answer made Esteth no longer hesitate. As long as there is a sound comes out of the hole, I can support it in 5 seconds. Su Xiao took a breath. Now it was the time to show his loyalty. Doing something would be easier than talking sweet talk to gain trust. Dragon Flash appeared in his hand. Su Xiao's breath gradually slowed down, the heartbeat began to slow down as well. The breath was completely gained back. Su Xiao walked slowly into the hole, and his feet stepped on the snowfield without making any sound. Esteth's eyes widened after witnessing the scene. He was definitely a top assassin. She believed in Su Xiao's origin even more. Dived into the cave for dozens of meters. There was a large space in front of him. A white-haired giant wolf curled up to sleep on the ground. Although this giant wolf was sleeping, the feeling it gave Su Xiao was very dangerous. It made his hair stand up. Limiting the breath to the limit, Su Xiao quietly walked in front of the giant wolf. This giant wolf was the super dangerous species named Fenrir. The dragon flash was rose high, and the blade flashed through the cold light. Su Xiao's muscles tightened. He tried his best to smash the sword down. Pucci. Blood splashed, and a wolf ear which was as big as a palm was cut off. Woof. Fenrir jumped up with a scream like a puppy that was suddenly kicked. The giant wolf Fenrir had already woken up. The beast's pupils started at Su Xiao with anger. A threatening to groan from his throat came. The eyes of the wolf revealed confusion and anger. Fenrir was awakened at the moment that the dragon flash cut down. This super dangerous species was not easy to deal with. The giant wolf Fenrir was 4 meters tall and about 7 meters long. The hairs on the whole body were like snow. The sharp claws reflect the metal light. Su Xiao's sword was on Fenrir's head. His goal was to cut its head, but the giant wolf's speed was so fast that it made him fear. The rushing running sound came from the rear. Esteth arrived. Chapter 205. After the sound of rushing footsteps came, Esteth arrived, and the cave fell into silence. I missed. This giant wolf is very fast. Su Xiao's attacking speed was not slow, but even so, the giant wolf Fenrir dodged at the most dangerous moment. How fast is it? Esteth and Su Xiao fought before. She knew how fast Su Xiao's sword was. It's so fast that he left after images. Esteth's pupils shrank. Really? Fenrir's previous. Huh, The strong wind was blowing, Esteth blue long hair was blown up, the giant wolf Fenrir had appeared in front of Esteth. A wolf claw wrapped in cyan energy lifted up, fine wind blade emerged around the wolf's claw. Boom! An explosion came, Esteth was hit flying by the giant wolf Fenrir. It was too fast, Esteth didn't even have time to react. Seeing this scene, Su Xiao's eyes pumped, the speed of the beast was more abnormal than he expected. Huh! The same wind-breaking sound came, Su Xiao subconsciously put Dragon Flash in front of him, with the blade facing outward. Boom! Su Xiao was also hit flying as well, the blood was splashed on Su Xiao's clothes. The giant wolf Fenrir was hit by the Dragon Flash's blade. The wolf's claw was cut open a wound, and the blood stained the white hair. Su Xiao was hit seriously by this claw, the dangerous species Fenrir was a little terrible. Cough, cough. There was a feeling of heaviness came from his chest, he got up under the uncomfortableness. The reaction speed reward that he got from the 20 points in agility just appeared. If it wasn't for it, he wouldn't be able to react at all. Huh, the unique wind-breaking sound appeared again, Su Xiao subconsciously put Dragon Flash in front of him horizontally. A furry claw stopped in front of the blade. Huh, Fenrir disappeared in the cave, becoming a cyan after image. Crack, crack, crack. The frozen crisp sound appeared. Su Xiao glanced at it and found that an ice wall blocked the exit of the cave. It became a chamber. This woman was cruel, blocking the hole meant that they had to fight to the death. The figure covered by cold air cam, Su Xiao could feel that this was Esteth. This can't work, I will attract Fenrir's attention, you attack it? No problem, this giant wolf's defense is not strong, the appropriate timing is up to 2 swords. The giant wolf Fenrir belonged to the kind of dangerous species that had extreme fast speed but lacked defense. This type of dangerous species was not easy to deal with, just a mistake could let you die. White ice plane. Esteth stamped her feet, and a thin layer of ice spread quickly around. This layer of thin ice could not harm the enemy, the surface of ice formed was exceptionally smooth. Boom! A loud sound came, a large piece of gravel splashed, the giant wolf Fenrir surprisingly hit the rock wall. Fenrir, which was hitting the rock wall, looked a little stupid, shaking its head and trying to stand up, but the smooth ice under his feet led its limbs to open outwards. This majestic giant wolf lied on the ice with a very funny look. This one is very creative, but I can't move as well. Su Xiao's posture was a bit weird. The Dragon Flash was stabbed into the ice, his hands held Dragon Flash tightly, he continued to slip. I will release the ice under your feet later, I will consume the breast's strength and wait for the opportunity. Esteth stabilized her body with a weird pose, the look of this sadism queen was also very funny. Although it was a bit funny, this did limit the speed of the giant wolf Fenrir. The giant wolf Fenrir's IQ was not low, the claws of the limbs stretched out, the shiny claws were stabbed into the ice. Even so, Fenrir's speed was not fast, at most, the speed was like an ordinary person walking. The original killing scene had changed, Esteth with the weird post-walking and Fenrir would fall down after 2 steps. Su Xiao tried to control his emotions and remained cold. He just almost laughed. Excluding the fun, Esteth's was a good strategist. If not for such a creative way, they will face extremely fierce killing. The beast is a beast, it can never be compared with humans' IQ. Fenrir wanted to be close to Esteth, the speed advantage of Fenrir disappeared, it could not get close to Esteth in short time. Esteth attacked with ice ability before closing to Fenrir, Fenrir was hit, retreated, and the balance of the victory began to shift. Pucci, pucci, pucci. The 3 ice thorns deeply immersed in Fenrir's body. After the giant wolf was stabbed to retreat, the hot blood dripped on the ice and quickly condensed. It was totally stabbed by 8 ice thorns, Fenrir could almost not hold it. The ice on the way was stained with blood. Su Xiao only attacked once, Now the battle was going to end. Howl. A howl spread. Although Fenrir was a wolf, Su Xiao felt that this giant wolf was as smart as humans. When the Fenrir's physical strength was about to be extracted, the giant wolf looked at the rock wall. The wolf's eyes flashed through the sight that only intelligent creature had. Su Xiao felt something wrong. This giant wolf may fight back before dying. Sure enough, Fenrir barely used his limbs to prop up his body. He stabbed his claws into the ice and jumped to the rock wall. Fenrir's claws pierced into the rock wall and the whole body was hung on the rock wall. Esteth also found it wrong. She immediately removed the ice on the ground and quickly rushed to Fenrir. At the moment when the ice layer was removed, Su Xiao pulled out the dragon flash, and also rushed to Fenrir. Fenrir did not pay attention to Su Xiao. It climbed to the high position of the rock wall with claws rapidly. The entire cave was at least 20 meters high. Fenrir climbs to the highest point in just a few seconds. After climbing to the top, Fenrir stared at Esteth with hatred, the human who hurt him most. Cyan energy wrapped Fenrir's whole body. This giant wolf became powerful and mysterious. SHH. Fenrir jumped down from the rock wall, and the whole body flew like a cannonball to Esteth. In Su Xiao's sight, Fenrir directly turned into an afterimage. When he found Fenrir, Fenrir had already appeared in front of Esteth. The ice surged around Esteth. Fenrir was 10 times faster than the speed of the ice produced. Dozens of claws flashed in an instant. Esteth had a few blood flowers on her body. Fenrir not only moved fast but also attacked quickly. The wolf claws madly attacked. A cyan claw moved toward Esteth's throat. Once the claw hit Esteth, she would at least be disabled. Crack, crack, crack. The ice layer finally spread on Esteth's body. Esteth was frozen into an ice sculpture. Crack, crack. Fenrir was still scratching. The ice was splashing. Just as Fenrir scratched energetically, he suddenly felt a pricking in its throat, and then its body flew away uncontrollably. Ding! A long sword pierced Fenrir's throat and nailed Fenrir to the rock wall. The wolf body was hung in the air. The severe pain made Fenrir struggle. The blood puffed made Dragon Flash red. After being stabbed through the throat by the sharp Dragon Flash, he would die faster if he struggled. Su Xiao also kept the action of throwing Dragon Flash. Chapter 206. You killed, elite creature, Fenrir. Fenrir is an elite creature, gaining 2.6% of the source of the world, and now has a total of 2.6% of the source of the world. Your talent Psychic activated, permanently adding 15 points of mana values, and the current mana values are 488 points. Fenrir died in a struggle. A blue treasure chest fell to the ground. Su Xiao quickly stepped forward to put away the treasure chest and pulled out the Dragon Flash. The ice layer on Esteth's body gradually dissipated. The blood dripped down through Esteth's arms. Beautiful attack. Esteth's chest was moving up and down strongly. The battle with Fenrir lasted less than 5 minutes, but it was abnormally dangerous. Esteth's silver-gray dress of military uniform was scratched out a large crack. Her dress was very sexy. After this fierce killing, she had serious bearing accident. Esteth pulled the clothes up by her trembling arms, hiding the 2/3 part of bearing accident. What did you see? General, you have bearing accident. Su Xiao's straightforwardness made Esteth's blue veins stood out her temples, but thinking of Su Xiao's training in the assassination unit, Esteth sighed helplessly. She was now the chief, Su Xiao, who was the assassin. Of course, he had to answer the facts he witnessed, no matter what he saw. If you dare to tell others, I will cut your tongue. I won't tell others, but the general, you have a bearing accident again. Shut up. Esteth's mouth twitched. If Su Xiao's identity is not a cold and ruthless assassin by cruel training, Esteth may kill him. Give me the clothes. Su Xiao took off his shirt and threw it to Esteth. Help me bandage the wound, I lost too much blood. Esteth was weak and leaned on the rock wall. Fenrir's claws hurt her a lot. So Xiao took out a bandage in his clothes. This made Esteth somewhat surprised. Do you carry this with you? So Xiao took a bandage and walked in front of Esteth. Yes, there was a companion who died by losing too much blood in front of me. I still don't want to die, so I carry bandages with me. So Xiao just bullshits, these bandages were taken out from the storage space. It was inevitable that Esteth had bearing accidents while dealing with the wounds. So Xiao looked all of her, but Esteth didn't say anything. She lost too much blood, she would die if the wounds were not dealt as soon as possible. She was a woman but also a warrior. This was the weakness of Taiga users, although their abilities were strong, the physical qualities were not excellent. Of course, this was only relative. According to Su Xiao's suspicion, Esteth's every attribute should not be worse than him, or even higher. Cleaning the wounds, suturing, and bandaging, Su Xiao's movements were skillful, he was often injured. Thank you for that attack, no, that is your duty. You just saved my life. You will replace Jerome as my adjutant. Jerome is no longer suitable for fighting, going to the logistics department of Empire will be good, it's very suitable for retiring. Although Esteth was cruel to the enemy, she was very generous and concerned about her subordinates. As long as subordinates were approved by Esteth, she would not treat them with her sadist character. In the original book, Esteth's subordinate let a lot of people from the night raid go recklessly, he was only a little penalized by Esteth. The hunter has joined the Empire camp, the current position as an adjutant. Hint, since the hunter is the first one joined the Empire camp, we reward 1% of the sources of the world, now you have a total of 3.6% the sources of the world. Su Xiao looked as usual, but he was relieved in mind. Being Esteth's adjutant was a high position, but it was not present that Esteth fully believed in him. Su Xiao was an outside assassin from other countries. Esteth wanted him next to her. She could play a role as a monitor. It was human nature, Su Xiao would do this as well. Trust could not be built in one night, which required a process. Helping Esteth to bandage the wounds, Esteth draped Su Xiao's coat and leaned against the rock wall. I want to sleep for a while, wake me up after 3 hours. After that, Esteth closed her eyes, the breathing became lighter, Esteth could sleep under this kind of cold climate. Although Esteth blocked the exit of the cave with an ice wall, the temperature in the cave was not high, Su Xiao needed to keep his body temperature. He came to Fenrir's body, Su Xiao looked at the fur of this giant wolf, the heat insulation of this thing must be good. After peeling off the wolf skin, Su Xiao came to the ice wall that blocked the cave. The dragon flash cut out a hole on the ice wall, Su Xiao took the wolf skin and walked out of the cave. Esteth's eyes slightly opened, she found that Su Xiao left and did not say anything, just continued to rest. Coming to the outside of the cave was a world of ice and snow, Su Xiao cleaned the white wolf skin by snow, and put the side with hair on the body, the speed of losing body temperature decreased significantly. This was not enough, Su Xiao began to search nearby. 20 minutes later, Su Xiao, whose head was covered with snowflakes, returned to the cave. At this time, he held a pile of wood in his arms. He found a dead wood nearby and smashed the dead wood to get relatively dry wood. After 5 minutes, a bonfires rose, and the temperature in the cave gradually increased. 2 hours later, Esteth woke up, her injuries recovered, she was still weak because of losing a lot of blood. Didn't know when it was already warm in the cave. A smell of meat came, Esteth sat up with doubts. Is it Fenrir's meat? Su Xiao was turning a few pieces of meat on the fire. No, I've tried Fenrir's meat, it's coarse and it contains some toxic, this is coney meat. Su Xiao shared the barbecue with Esteth and then silently ate it. He had not drunk water after entering the derivative world. Roasted coney meat was not delicious, the meat was very tough, and it was difficult to bite. After dinner, Esteth tried to stand up and noticed that her body was almost recovered and left the cave with Susiao. Outside of the cave was still cold and whistling. Esteth, whose body was full of bandages, and Susiao, who was wearing a wolf skin, looked particularly interesting. After half an hour, the two returned to the extreme north fortress. This time Susiao's identity was different. After Esteth whispered a few words with the former adjutant, the 50-year-old adjutant's eye turned a little red. "General, I..." The old adjutant wanted to say something, but Esteth waved. "Just retiring in the Empire, no one dares to provoke my subordinates in the Empire." Esteth was not arrogant, this was indeed true. The situation of the Empire was somewhat complicated. Although the little emperor in the palace had real powers, he lost his parents when he was a child and was brought up by the minister of the former king. The minister began to brainwash the little emperor when he was a little. Today the little emperor listened to whatever the minister said. The minister raised the young emperor as the puppet. It was no longer a small emperor to rule the empire, but the minister. Although the minister was not very good looking, he was fat, but his IQ was very high. The parents of the little emperor were poisoned by the minister. After more than 10 years, the minister had a lot of real power. If there was no existence of the Supreme Taiguo, the little emperor would have been killed. The Supreme Taiguo must be started by the people with royal blood. Otherwise, it would be a pile of iron. If the minister was afraid of someone in the emperor's side, that person must be Esteth. Chapter 207. 3 days later, in the fortress of the extreme north, inside a stone house. Outside was a world full snow and ice, inside of the stone room was warm like spring. From the window, a female general was saying something. Behind the female general was a map. The east and south lines must be attacked at the same time. "Kylie and Hati, you handle these two places." Esteth was arranging tomorrow's strategy. Her injuries had almost recovered. "Yes." The two leaders accepted the order, their faces were full of confidence. "Tomorrow the Tantas fortress will be the main attack point, then I will lead people to attack the main entrance. Byakuya, you sneak into the enemy's fortress tonight, waiting for the opportunity to assassinate Numasika." Susiao nodded, and Esteth continued to arrange the strategy. Susiao thought in his mind, this war would not last for a long time. Esteth's Taiga demon's extract was very strong in the war, the army was only a cover. The main force was only Esteth. At the end of this war, Esteth would definitely return to the capital of the empire. He was now Esteth's adjutant, he had more than 80% of chance to return together. In the army, there was not only Susiao, an adjutant, but he also did not show his commanding power. Esteth might not leave him in the army. It was the most important thing to end the war and return to the capital of the empire as soon as possible. Some contractors messed up, now the capital of the empire should be chaotic. The combat meeting soon ended, Susiao was left alone with Esteth. "This is the information of Numasika. This person easy to deal with. He does not like females and lives simple, but he has a weakness, that is he likes to drink. Men in the extreme north, no one didn't like to drink alcohol, which was caused by the cold weather. He will usually drink after 10 p.m., but it is not difficult to assassinate him at night. You can do it as you see fit." "Okay." The meaning of Esteth was obvious, finding ways to kill Numasika. Boom, a purse was thrown at the conference table. "There is a map here. Waysuit, high-calorie foods, and some tools that require when you sneak in, 2 signal shells. Red means the mission fails, requires rescue, green means you have succeeded, but you're trapped in the enemy's camp." Esteth arranged well, Susiao was now one of her own, so Esteth's sadism attribute had disappeared. "Okay." Xiao just nodded. "You're really distant, come back soon, remember, you are now the assassin of the army, not the dead." "Okay." Susiao took out the winter clothes from the bag, the winter clothes were fit. It should be made by some dangerous species fur, which was excellent in cold resistance and was convenient to move. Come back soon. Esteth concerned about her subordinates. Okay. Susiao left the conference room. After he left, Esteth found a signal shell at the conference table. It was the red signal shell that represented the failure of the action. He only accepts success but not a failure? This time, I really find the right person. He is strong, had a cold character, and doesn't concern about other things besides the order. Which country trains this kind of excellent person? Esteth sat at the conference table and handed on her chin with one hand, the other was playing the red signal shell. Take him back to the capital of the empire after the war, this kind of person is not suitable for the military. Boom. Esteth put the red signal shell on the table. If someone unpacks the signal, the person will find out that the signal is empty. The action of assassination failed was equal to death. How could they be rescued? In the blizzard which was whistling, Susiao took a map and walked in the snow field. At this time there was no other person nearby. Susiao moved some stiff cheeks. It was not easy to face people without expressions. He felt that he could not even laugh. The shitty assassination. Susiao blamed, the 3 days of being arrogant greatly could be described as being physically and mentally exhausted, he would not pretend to be an assassin next time. Numasika of tonight's fortress. Looking at a portrait in hand carefully, that was a young man in the portrait. On the low wall of Tanta's fortress. Have you heard? They sent military power again. They have 500,000 this time. The extreme North Army standing on the wall said, there were some concerns in the person's sight. Shit, that will be useless. They sent 200,000 last time, and it was useless. They just come for feeding the wolves, those assholes in the empire deserve to die. A burst of laughter came, the extreme North Army seemed to be disdainful to the Empire Army. It's almost the time, why has the person who relieves the guard not come? A soldier began to be impatient. Who said no? The guys of the Calibats have become more and more arrogant recently, they just win for few times and become very cocky. I will go to ask them quicker. I go with you. Several soldiers left, an older soldier shook his head. He didn't want to offend people. Young people, oh. A groan, an old soldier fell down softly, Susiao turned over the wall, throwing the old soldier into the snow outside the city wall, he disappeared into the town of the fortress. The night was dark, the strong winds in the extreme north rarely stopped, but the falling snowflakes never stopped. There was no electricity in the town of the fortress, everyone rested early after making loves, the town was abnormally quiet. Susiao walked through the building, he tried to find a remote location. The 23rd on the left and 73 on the right. Susiao confirmed where did Numasika live, he quickly aimed at a stone house. The stone house was not tall compared with other buildings in the fortress, the stone house could at least block the cold wind. There was no guard in front of the door, Numasika himself was the strongest force in the extreme north, he did not need guards. Susiao was close to the stone house with tiny sounds and perceived the situation inside the house. A young man was drinking in the room alone. The man in the room was Numasika. Martha, I will get my revenge for you, very soon. Numasika in the room was obviously drinking, looking from his face this alcohol was nothing to him. Susiao waited outside the house. Now the timing was not good. He was not prepared to kill him forcibly. If the alarms too many people, he may be left here today. As time went by, it was about 1 a.m., the temperature outside the house in the extreme north was even colder. Numasika had fallen asleep, Susiao wouldn't even be discovered by the super dangerous species after his breath became slow, don't mention Numasika. Slowly walked to the front of the door, Susiao held a test tube in his hand, the test tube contained off-white liquid. Pouring the liquid into the gap below the door. The liquid vaporized quickly, and unintentional smoke spread out. Su Xiao took out a gas mask and put it on his face. He was also uncomfortable after inhaling this thing. Waiting for 10 minutes at the door, Su Xiao pushed the door and got into the stone house. A heat wave came. Numasika, the alien prince, was lying on the bed, his body was slightly trembling. How could it be like this? At this time, the alien prince even could not speak clearly. Did not even think of getting up and fighting. Nothing is impossible. The dragon flashes across on Numasika's neck and the blade cut down. Pucci. A head was cut off. The alien prince was majestic in extreme north, was easily killed. Chapter 208. You killed Numasika. Numasika is a key character in the extreme north, gaining 1.1% of the sources of the world, and now you have a total of 4.7% sources of the world. Your talent psychic is activated, permanently adding 14 points of mana values, and the current mana values are 502 points. The psychic added 14 points of mana values, which meant that Numasika's strength was not weak, which showed how terrible an assassin who was good at assassination was. Assassinating the enemy's leader before the war, the death of the leader would have a devastating shock to morals. A blue treasure chest appeared on Numasika's body. Su Xiao had good luck recently, or the enemies he had recently contacted were very strong. Put away the blue treasure chest and Numasika's head. After 3 minutes, Su Xiao left the town of the fortress. 2 hours later, Su Xiao returned to the fortress of the empire. After 2 hours and 10 minutes, Numasika's head was placed in front of his death, which took 6 hours and 4 minutes. Killing people in the dust, getting out of the white blade. As death had already slept, she intentionally came back after hearing that Su Xiao had come back. The head of Numasika. Su Xiao's efficiency made his death somewhat unbelievable. She originally planned to assassinate Numasika during the war. There were more opportunities at that time. As death opened the bag which was stained by the blood, a skull rolled on the wooden table. The other generals who were present screamed. They were not afraid of the skull but were somewhat shocked by Numasika's death. Great, without Numasika's leading, let's see how these aliens in the extreme north resist. Tomorrow we will be able to defeat these aliens. The atmosphere in the room was warm. Some of the generals who ruled out Su Xiao gave him looks of approval. Is there an accident in action, or have the enemies found you? Esteth was very calm, but she could not hide the smile near the corner of her mouth. It seemed that she was very satisfied with Su Xiao's efficiency. At least until the time I left, the extreme north army did not find it. I only killed Numasika during the whole process. I seriously injured a soldier that was guarding the wall. The soldier was thrown into the snow pile after I broke his spine. He will not be discovered for a short time. The generals looked at each other. They had a new understanding of Su Xiao's action. It is good. Esteth clapped the wooden table and stood up. The soldiers have been resting for more than 6 hours. Gather the whole army, and immediately attack the enemy's fortress. Esteth commanded. All the generals got up and took the lead. This was a great opportunity. The night raids and the death of the leader were buried beneath the waves for the extreme north army. You work hard. You don't have to participate in the war. Go back to sleep and get ready to return to the capital of the empire with me tomorrow. Esteth got up and left. It seemed that the war had been already won. After everyone in the room left, on Su Xiao's mouth appeared an undetectable smile. The work had finally paid off. He would return to the capital of an empire with a high position. The plan went well. Back to the bedroom. There was only one bed, a closet, which looked a bit rudimentary. The army with 50,000 stationed at the extreme north's fortress, having a single room, was already a VIP. Esteth was his neighbor. An exquisite lighter appeared in his hand. Su Xiao checked the cool-down time of the lucky flame. After enhancing to +7, the cool-down time of the lucky flame was greatly reduced. Some embarrassing problems appeared. He did not have 600 points of park coins to use the lucky flame. Looking at the only 157 points of park coins, Su Xiao felt helpless. 2 blue treasure chests could only be opened one. First, it was very possible to get the paradise coins after opening the treasure chest. After hesitating for a while, Su Xiao decided to open the treasure chest that Numasika dropped. The huge Fenrir's power was stronger, the value of its treasure chest would be higher. You opened the treasure chest, blue, and got the following items. Get 2,700 paradise coins. Get Icefield Prince token. Icefield Prince token. Origin, Akame Ga Kill. Quality, blue. Category, jewelry. Durability, 40 to 40 seconds. Equipment needs more than 15 points of charm. Equipment effect, the Prince's token, active, summons 3 to 5 extreme northern soldiers to fight. The soldiers of the extreme north army have no personal consciousness and can execute cumbersome orders. Hint, using the Prince's token, active, will consume 80 points of mana values. Tip, the existing time of the soldiers of the extreme north army is 10 minutes to 2 hours. According to the charm attribute. Hint, the number of summoning the soldiers of the extreme north army will depend on your charm attribute. Hint, the attribute of soldiers of the extreme north army will depend on your intelligence attributes. Rating, 46, note, blue equipment scores range from 31 to 70. Introduction, sacrifice before achieving triumph? No. I died with the wrong treatment. Price, 8,600 paradise coins. Seeing the attribute of Icefield Prince token, Su Xiao was a bit surprised. This thing he may not be able to use it at all. He looked at his charm attribute that had 3 points and looked at the 15 points of charm attributes that the Icefield Prince token required. Trash. He threw the token on the bed. Su Xiao looked into another treasure chest. In fact, Iceland Prince token was not rubbish. This thing was very valuable for summoners. There were not many summoners in the Reincarnation Paradise. It was difficult to sell. Crack, the lighter cover of Lucky Flame popped open, a light blue flame appeared. Lucky Flame was different from before. In the past, it was +1 luck. Now it was strengthened to +7 and grew to +2 luck. Lighting up the smoke, opening the box, the action went smoothly, the flash he imagined did not appear. What was strange was that the treasure chest had neither flashed nor normal opened process. In the past, when the treasure chest was opened, the items would automatically fall into the hand, but the treasure chest was opened, nothing appeared in hand, even no hint. Could it be? Su Xiao's face looked bad. He thought of a situation which was unlucky to the extreme. That was the treasure chest empty. Using the lucky flame, the treasure chest itself was still blue quality, the two added together actually became empty boxes. This made Su Xiao somewhat unacceptable. But he noticed a strange scene. After opening, the treasure chest did not disappear. The opened treasure chest seemed to make Su Xiao angry. At this time, a cyan light surged from the treasure chest, a shadow of wolf head rushed out of the treasure chest. Howl. A howl was spread. Su Xiao was sitting on the bed. This sudden change made him shocked. He immediately turned back. Dragon Flash appeared in the hands. Su Xiao accepted the empty box, but the treasure box also had a F-King trap. Dragon Flash blocked in front of him. Su Xiao stared at the treasure chest vigilantly. The howl spread very far away. What was strange was that no one rushed into the room. This showed that the howl only he could hear. In the treasure chest was the illusion of the giant wolf Fenrir. At this time, this giant wolf was staring at Su Xiao with hatred. It waved its claws but could not escape from the treasure chest. Boom! The treasure chest shook, a black hole was formed in the center, the illusion of Fenrir was instantly sucked into the black hole. The strange phenomenon disappeared. The blue treasure chest gradually turned into light particles, an egg-sized meatball fell on the bed. Using the dragon for flashing to touch meatball, the meatball did not react. Su Xiao tried to touch it with the fingers, the properties of the meatball appeared. Fenrir's soul. Origin, Akame Ga Kill. Quality. Types. Score. Introduction, the soul is a rare strategic material, it can be sold to the reincarnation paradise. Price, 20,000 paradise coins, soul crystal, small, ×4. Su Xiao scowled, with the style of the reincarnation paradise, the price of this thing was definitely more than 20,000 park coins plus soul crystal. But what was the soul? Maybe it could enhance attributes after eating it. Hesitating for a long time, Su Xiao did not dare to eat it. This thing had neither expiration date nor safety certification. If he dies after eating, he can only think he's unlucky. Chapter 209. Su Xiao laid in the bedroom. There were noisy running sounds, horns and so on came from outside. The army of the empire was assembling. The war already had results before the war began. The empire would win. Not talking about that, the leader of the extreme north army was dead. As death as Taiga demon's extract could not be blocked by the extreme north army. Taiga was a very magical thing that could help users to control the ice, water flow, and so on. Some Taiga were simply weapons with special abilities, such as killing by one hit, abnormal sharpness and so on. Taiga could be a ring, a knife, a sword, an armor, and so on. Taiga could not be used by everyone. Taiga would choose the host who was matched with it. The ability of Taiga would still exist after the host died, waiting for the next host. Taiga could be divided into several major categories. The first one was edible or could drink like a demon's extract, which could only be used once. The ability of these Taiga was generally strong. The second type was weapons. This kind of Taiga had a wide variety of forms. It could use in knife, gun, sword, and so on, and had various abilities. The third one was more magical. It was a biological Taiga. This Taiga may be a humanoid creature, or it may be a dog or a bear. Each of the three Taiga had its own advantages and disadvantages. In general, the one-time Taiga was still stronger. Su Xiao recalled various Taiga's appearance and abilities in mind. He would face the Taiga users in the future. When he thought about the information of Taiga, the horn for gathering came from outside of the fortress. Are they finally going to attack? What is the situation now? It was too early to think about it. The most important thing was to rest. After 5 minutes, Su Xiao fell asleep deeply. After returning to the empire, he was not so comfortable. He was like walking deeply into the enemy's camp. The next morning, the cold wind blew through. Inside Tanta's fortress. At this time, Tanta's fortress was completely different from last night. A large piece of ice appeared in the fortress. The house was frozen. People in extreme north were frozen to death, were everywhere on the ground. The entire fortress had become a world of ice. An empire soldier rushed out of the fortress. His heart tightened when he went through the snow field. The scene on the snow field could only be described as terrible. A large number of prisoners of war were stabbed on the sticks. The sticks stood in the snow field. Looking at it, there were at least thousands of sticks with humans on it. The scene behind the sticks was even crueler. After the war broke out last night, the extreme north army suddenly collapsed. Without the command of the leader, and as Death's strong ice ability made the battlefield become a shamble. The extreme north army surrendered at 5 in the morning. The Tanta of the fortress stationed at the army of 30,000 people and 70,000 to 80,000 civilians. Didn't underestimate these 70,000 to 80,000 civilians. They were also soldiers at a crucial moment. After all these people surrendered, Death issued an order. Kill, didn't leave any one of them. Killing them in a cruel way, using the blood of the extreme north army to shock other unstable aliens around the empire. The massacre began at 6 o'clock and ended before 7 o'clock. Nearly 100,000 people were killed less than an hour. Some of their bodies were piled up, some were made into snowmen, and some were stabbed by sticks. The news was transferred to the other small units scattered around the Extreme North Army at 9 o'clock in the morning. The troops of the Extreme North Army began to flee and fled to the colder and deeper place of the Extreme North. At 11 o'clock in the morning, they could not see any people of Extreme North within a few kilometers of the fortress in the Extreme North. These people were scared a lot. The Empire Army withdrew to the fortress of Extreme North around 12 o'clock. Around 1 p.m., more than 300,000 soldiers took the lead to return to the Empire. Around 2 o'clock, more than 100,000 Empire soldiers who were not injured also began to leave, leaving only less than 50,000 in the fortress of the Extreme North. The reason why did they retreat so fast was because the marching war required a lot of money. The army provision that the 500,000 soldiers ate every day was a terrible number. These foods were shipped, the cost was higher, there were other expenses, such as medical, drugs, armors, weapons, pensions for people who were dead, and others. If 500,000 people guard the fortress, the current saving of the Empire treasury would be in arrears of soldiers' pay in half of the year. The economy of the Empire would be greatly declined within a year. It would be enough to have 50,000 people to guard in the fortress. In the past, there were only a few thousand people to guard in the fortress of the Extreme North. It was too difficult to transport supplies to the Extreme North. The Empire had been reducing the number of border guards. It was no wonder that the Empire would eventually perish. Reducing the number of border guards was a fantastic way to wait for death. The current empire was like a rotten tree, so you could see who had the courage to kick it. On the way that the Empire army back, most of the soldiers were walking, which led to the overall speed slowing down. Su Xiao was sitting on a bumpy horse's back. He never rode a horse. He didn't think that it was so difficult to master. How could an assassin not ride a horse, so he should ride even he could not. Su Xiao used his waist and bottom to put the strength to ride the horse forcibly. The first horse he rode fell to the ground after 30 minutes of traveling. Its mouth spat white foam, the abdomen kept twitching, which was because he slammed too hard, made the horse suffer. The fate of the second horse was much better, it had not had the sign of spitting foam from its mouth. This horse was fine, but Su Xiao was not good. It was a very tiring thing to ride barely. His bottom was very painful now, the position below the chest was sore. General, how long until we return to the Empire? Su Xiao took the initiative to ask Esteth rarely. Well. Esteth was surprised. About 2 days or so. Su Xiao's face looked worse. You can't ride a horse, right? He was discovered. This point Su Xiao was also very helpless. Yep. Why? I hate this hairy beast, which makes me very uncomfortable. Esteth was surprised. She may not have thought that Su Xiao, this cold person, would hate something. Have not your previous organization taught you how to ride a horse? They taught, but I killed the horse. This time, Esteth was not calm. Killing the horse? What's the consequence? I was lifted and whipped for 200 times. I almost died. Esteth chuckled and looked at Su Xiao with amazement. What happened to this in the end? I practiced running, and finally ran faster than the horse. The endurance was not worse than the horse. Esteth once again chuckled. Other officers near Com also laughed. Running faster than horses. What kind of subordinates did I get? If you don't like to ride the horse, why do you ride the horse now? Su Xiao knew that he could not escape this problem. He gave an unexpected answer. If the assassin can't ride a horse, will be suspected. If 10 sentences are a lie, the lie will be exposed sooner or later, but if there are a few truths in the 10 sentences, then the lies would be treated as truth. Don't force yourself. Go to sit on the back of the supply wagon, your horse is spitting foam again. The war horse under Su Xiao turned its head, the innocent gaze seemed to accuse Su Xiao. Thank you, General. Jumping off from the horse, Su Xiao walked with a limp to the supply wagon. He finally got rid of it and succeeded in deceiving them. Chapter 210. After the army marched south for 2 days, the temperature gradually increased. The empire was in the fall, the weather of the early autumn was not hot, the cool breeze blowing from time to time made people feel refreshed. Their current position was in front of the imperial capital. Finally arrived, the imperial capital was the main battlefield. Gradually closing to the imperial capital, they occasionally encountered traders on the main road. These traders immediately rushed cart to give way after seeing the troop, their heads drooped, and did not dare to look directly at the army. After seeing the female general with blue hair at the head of the team, the traders were obviously surprised. General Esteth is back. Isn't she going to the battlefield of the extreme north? Don't tell me. A trader did not dare to talk more. Don't talk nonsense, look at the momentum of the army. Does this look like defeat? It is clear that they won. But that scale of battle will finish at least for a year and a half, right? Merchants whispered the previous fears and resentments had vanished. If the imperial capital has an army that is supported by civilians, it must be this one. The direction of the army was not going to the imperial capital, but the military camp outside the imperial capital. The news of having a great victory in the extreme north had been sent back. There were 3 generals in front of the military camp waited for Esteth to return. The 3 of them were Esteth's henchmen. The 3 were all Taiga users, the 3 were called the 3 beasts. They were an old man, a muscular man, a cute girl. He dressed like a butler, named Liver, was the former general of the empire. He was imprisoned by offending the Mogul and was rescued by Esteth. His loyalty was extremely high. His Taiga was water dragon possession, black marlin, the ring-shaped Taiga, it could control any liquid. The strong man named Datara, the battle madman, his Taiga named double-bladed axe, Belvac, 2-bladed axes were usually one, it could be disassembled from the middle, after the axe was out, as long as the axe still had the power, it would track the enemy. The last girl dressed like a cute girl named No. Although this guy dressed like a cute girl, he was not a cute girl but a man cross-dressing. No's Taiga was military music dream, scream. This kind of Taiga was a flute, it sounded different music to manipulate the enemy's emotions and physical state, it was an assistant Taiga. The 3 men stood in front of the military camp at the moment. After seeing Esteth's figure, the 3 immediately greeted in front. General, how was your journey? Subordinates had prepared a feast for you. The old man Liver spoke, he bowed while talking, with one hand on the chest, white gloves on the hand and the clothes made him look like a butler. He was the captain of the 3 beasts. The banquet is not needed now. I will take you to meet the little emperor, but first I want to introduce you to a co-worker. The 3 beasts were somewhat confused. Co-worker? Is the general recruiting the talent in the extreme north? Well, this time I was getting a treasure, he's an assassin of another country. After hearing Esteth's words, the old man Liver slightly frowned. The background of a member of the assassination unit were generally complicated. But Liver would not say anything, this was Esteth's willingness, he would not defy. Tell you in advance, your co-worker is the top member of the assassination unit. I used to fight with him. If only talking about the ability to fight alone, his strength may not be weaker than me. The 3 beasts were shocked and looked at Esteth with stun. Strength, was not weaker than the general. Cute girl No swallowed, his voice was neutral. Biakia. Esteth shouted to the army behind, the 3 beasts' eyes stared in that direction. A black-haired man with a long sword at the waist came, the man's body was not strong, but it gave people a sharp feeling. This is your co-worker in the future, Biakia. Esteth looked at Su Xiao. The 3 are also my men. Okay. Su Xiao responded, he already recognized the 3. The 3 was called the 3 beasts. Although the strength of them was not weak, they would die in one of the following tasks. The strongest man died at the fastest speed, he was killed less than 5 minutes. Pay attention to your tone to talk to the general. The old man liver spoke, his sight was not friendly. Don't care about this. Byakuya's character is like this. The members of the top assassination unit are flawed. He is the most normal one. I offended General. Liver bowed again. Susiao didn't care about Liver's tone. Why should he care about a guy who would soon die? It's getting late, let's go see the emperor. 4 people took on a cart to the imperial capital. The imperial capital's area was not small. It was a large city. The whole city was in echelon form, the higher the position would be more prosperous. The center of the imperial capital was the palace could be called the city of the imperial capital. It could be seen how large the palace was. The entire palace was a plump round, the final building with upward layers, the highest point was even hundreds of meters. The carriages passed through the imperial capital. There were many people on the streets of the imperial city. They dressed well. This was the capital of a country. Economic prosperity was reasonable. The sun hung on the sky listlessly, the whole imperial capital was covered by dim sunshine, the time was 6 o'clock in the evening. The carriage drove to the front of the palace, this should be guarded heavily. But the guards in front of the door saw the sign on the carriage, they simply let them go after asking a question, they did not even need a steth to show up. The scope of the palace was not small, the carriage arrived in front of the palace after driving a while. This made Susiao a bit strange. This was the palace, how could the generals drive the carriage to the front of the hall? They should get off the car outside of the palace and walk to the hall would be right. It seemed that the little emperor was more useless than he imagined, at least Asteth did not care much about the little emperor. Getting off the cart and entering the hall. The hall was very majestic. The floor was covered with red carpet. There was a seat made of gold on the inner side. The seat was in a higher position, which was emperor's seat. A body with 13 or 14 years old was sitting in the seat, this was the little emperor. The little emperor was thin, giving a feeling of malnutrition. A purple dress was neither fish nor fowl, which looked a little girly. Although he was an emperor, he had no sense of majesty, Susiao felt that he was a very weak boy. Asteth walked into the hall with Susiao and others, they walked for a few meters in front of the little emperor and then kneeled to the ground. If it says Asteth partly kneels, it will be better to say that she partly squats on the ground, the leg which was kneeled did not land. This posture showed many problems. Looking at the little emperor, his expression had not changed, it seemed that this was normal. Susiao did the same thing, he partly squats, he would never kneel. At this time, he had already considered whether he would capture the little emperor, this teenager was definitely a pushover. An old man with a fat body and beard stood next to the little emperor. A middle-aged old man's beard was white, the skin did not have wrinkles because his body was fat, having nice life made the old man look not old, if his hair is not white, people will believe that he is a middle-aged man. This fat old man was the minister and controlled the little emperor. The minister held a plate of meat in his hand and stood next to the little emperor with a big belly. The meat he held was eaten by himself, not for the little emperor. After the initial observation, Susiao decided to give up. He was not sure whether the key was on the little emperor's body. He needed to consider for a long time. Chapter 211. General's death, the suppression in the extreme north is very excellent, I will give you a ton of gold for the reward. The little emperor spoke. This was a very majestic sentence. It changed the feeling when the little emperor spoke it. The slightly childish voice had no sense of majesty. It was like the students in the primary school were reading the text. Thank you, Your Majesty, I will reward those soldiers who are heroic to kill the enemies. Since I have already returned, the night raid that affects your life, I will annihilate it. Esteth talked to the little emperor and claimed herself as me, not as the subordinate. Susiao looked at the minister besides the little emperor and Esteth. The empire might be controlled by these two people. Thank you so much, I appreciate your assistance, except for... The little emperor was talking, Susiao's sight suddenly sharpened. Enemies come. Susiao looked at Esteth. Are you sure? Yes. Kill it. Susiao rushed to the side of the main hall. This is... The little emperor was stunned, the minister on the side was also puzzled. That is my subordinate. He found that there are enemies in the palace, it may be the members of Night Raid. Esteth no longer half squatted but stood up. 2 minutes later. Boom. A body full of blood was thrown from the side of the hall and stopped at Esteth's feet after rolling for a few times. Susiao's figure came out from the side of the hall, his body was stained with some blood. He carried a dragon flash which was stained with blood on his right hand and held a broken gun in his left hand. This body was a contractor, Susiao had long perceived the person. He did not pay attention to it. It was normal to have other contractors in the Empire camp. But this guy pointed his gun at Susiao's head for more than a dozen seconds. He was clearly aimed at Susiao. With a growing sense of danger, Susiao could judge that the person was using a certain skill to prepare to kill him by one attack. Susiao could not endure this, he decisively violently rushed to the front of the guy and killed him. With Susiao's perception, aiming at him in this close distance was simply looking for death. Is this the person's gun? Esteth knew that Susiao did not use guns, at least she did not see Susiao used it. Yes, I thought that he was the guard of the palace, but he aimed at a certain position for a too long time, he pointed the gun at the emperor. This is not what the guard should do. Esteth pondered for a while. My Majesty, is this the guard in the palace? This. The little emperor looked to the minister for help, it could be seen how the little emperor relied on the minister from this scene. Hey, anyone! The minister shouted loudly, several guards immediately rushed into the hall. Is this person a guard? The minister's question was quickly answered. He was a guard, not a guard of the main hall, but a low-level guard of the palace gate. It was obviously nothing to talk about that this kind of guard took the gun into the hall. Sure enough, there will be no weak soldiers under the strong generals, anyone comes, give him gold. Under the minister's order, the guards carried on a plate of gold. Esteth looked very distant, the minister's behavior was obviously to headhunt. Minister, this is my subordinate, I will reward him in person. Hearing Esteth's somewhat unfriendly tone, the minister smiled apologetically. I got so confused and somewhat scared by the assassin, General Esteth doesn't mind it. The minister was an old, cunning person. He knew he couldn't be hostile to Esteth. Otherwise, they would both be hurt. In this case, we will go back first, I will deal with the matter of Night Raid. Esteth pretended to leave. Wait a minute, as for dealing with Night Raid, I have a good idea. The minister picked up a piece of meat which was not fully cooked and put them into the mouth. As he chewed, a trace of blood slipped from the minister's mouth. I'm here to listen, sincerely. Esteth also did not want to be hostile with the minister began to describe his plan. The minister's plan was very simple, let Esteth's men assassinated some disobedient officials near the imperial capital. After assassinating the officials, they would say Night Raid did this, that is, the Night Raid would never tolerate this thing happen so that the Night Raid would expose. The plan seems a bit silly, but it was not realistically. The minister's goal was not the Night Raid, but those disobedient officials. He just wanted to use Esteth to exclude them. Of course, General Esteth will not do things in vain. This military spending this season will increase by 30%. The minister was indeed an old cunning person. He knew that Esteth did not love money, and he simply helped Esteth to expand the arms. This case? That's good. As death promised, the minister smiled joyfully, and the little emperor sat with some bored. The national events were basically decided in this way. The little emperor did have no power. After all, he could control the Taiguo. The little emperor had no intentions to manage. My Majesty, how about those last night? I prepare something for you tonight again. The minister looked at the little emperor with an indecent smile. The little emperor blushed, his eyes were full of expectations. As a fatuous ruler, the little emperor would love women's charms under the minister's guidance, but the little emperor was too young, at most 14 or 5 years old. Su Xiao suspected that the reason why the little emperor was thin was that the nutrition could not keep up as how much he spent. The minister and the little emperor walked behind the hall. Esteth looked at the three beasts and Su Xiao. You handle this, but I have other ideas. Several people walked outside the main hall. After leaving the main hall, the three beasts were ordered to assassinate the obedient official. Su Xiao did not go together. Esteth arranged it intentionally. The next day, in the imperial capital's countryside, the night raid's headquarters. Now let's talk about the reasons for calling everyone. The head of the night raid, Nayenda, sat in front of a dozen people. Nayenda was a woman with one eye, one arm, and white hair. The broken arm was replaced by a blackish-green metal arm. The blind eye was covered with a black eye patch. There were several main forces of night raid in front of Nayenda. There were still some new people around them. These were contractors with strong strength. Nayenda rose a piece of paper with the night raid's logo for everyone to see. There are several murders in imperial capital last night. The victims were all imperial officials who tended to rely on us. They were still hesitating, and this was left on the spot. Several people in the night raid were silent for a while. This is obviously shifting the blame on us. Only the minister will do this kind of thing. No one will do that except for him. Bullet, the strongest force of the night raid, spoke. His strength in the night raid absolutely ranked in the top 3. The Taiguo was the demon armor, Incurgio, the armored Taiguo. Taiguo's usual appearance was a sword. It could transform to armor in the battle. This is indeed the case. At first, the people did not believe that we did it, but now they believe it. Nayenda talked with a heavy tone. Why? The newcomer of the night raid, Tatsumai, said. He was a rural boy from the border of the empire. He had justice in his mind and wanted to join the empire camp. After witnessing the darkness of the emperor, he joined the night raid by chance. According to the original information, Tatsumai may not be the protagonist of Akame ga Kill World may be another person. Chapter 212. Those people that pretend to be us had killed a lot of powerful guards, so the ordinary people begin to doubt us. We night raid still needs to recruit talents around, this absolutely can't be tolerated. Nayenda held a black cigarette in her hand, she looked somewhat helplessness. This is obviously a bait which wants to attract us. Bullet spoke. When several people of night raid talked, the contractors around them were silent, they could only listen, they were not the official members of the night raid. It is indeed a bait. Nayenda nodded and continued to talk after thinking for a while. Under the premise of knowing this, I have something to say to you. The officials who are now murdered were good officials who had power, resisted the minister, and worried about the country and the people. This kind of talent needs establishing a new empire by our revolutionary army. We can no longer lose nice talents in the future. What do you think? Nayenda did not directly issue orders but used the way of discussion. When Tatsumai heard the situation and spoke first, after a speech which was full of a sense of justice, Nayenda stood up. Okay, let them know what the result of using our name is, let's teach them the rules of the killer. 2 officials may be attacked next, so we have to work separately. Nayenda began to arrange the plan. Bullet and Tatsumai were a team, another team were Akame and Lubbock. Both Akame and Lubbock were members of the night raid. Both of them were Taiguo users, especially the Akame's Taiguo, which was famous in the imperial capital. One cut killer, Murasame, if you're injured by this sword, you'll die. Even said so, Murasame's one cut killer was not a rule. Instead, the sword was attached with a kind of poison. After being stabbed by Murasame, the poison would invade the body to achieve the effect of one cut killer, which was similar to the principle of Su Xiao's Qing Gang Yin. Nayenda pondered for a while after ordering, looking at Leonie. Leonie was a beauty with blonde hair and big breast. Unlike women's weakness, she looked chubby, but her body was not fat. The skeleton was very large, which made people think her body shape was good. Leonie Taigo was Animal King, Lion L. After using it, it could make the Leonie become an animal, greatly improving her physical quality, smell, sensory and so on would be strengthened. After the transformation, Leonie still looked like a human, there were ears on the head, hands became half beast, which was two furry hands. Leonie, you will go to investigate Asthetha's actions, she has returned to the imperial capital. Nayenda was worried, only she knew how terrible Asthetha was. Okay, I am also curious about what kind of woman she is. Leonie was straight, she had begun to consider whether assassinate Asthetha in her mind. Just like this, move. Just when Nayenda was about to order, a contractor spoke. Boss, I don't know if I can give you some advice. The contractor wore a pair of wire-rimmed glasses, talked, his tone was soft. This contractor was Ivan. This was, of course, a pseudonym. Ivan was the representative of the contractors. He did not have the strongest strength, but he had the highest charm attributes. Ivan, talk about your opinion. The benefits of high charm appeared, he could be easy to communicate with Nayenda. This kind of person had a neutral attitude. Thank you for the boss. I had some suggestions for the plan, just some suggestions. Ivan continued to talk after finishing his thoughts. This is the case. Since Mr. Bullet and Ms. Akame are to be divided into two teams, one of them may fail to get them. I have a method for remote contact, which was an advanced technology stolen in the imperial capital. If any team of the two teams encounters an enemy with strong strength, they can immediately contact another team and the headquarters, so that they can get support in time. During the talk, Ivan took out 3 intercoms, the intercoms occasionally flashed through the green lights, indicating that this was green equipment. Nayenda looked curious, she soon understood the value of this thing immediately after testing it. Good, this will reduce the risk of action. Nayenda gave the intercoms to Akame and Bullet. The reason why the contractors did this was to try to maintain the strength of the night raid. Bullet, with strong power in the original book, was killed at this time. The action begins. Nayenda gave a command, everyone in the night raid moved. Among them, Leonie was the most active, and she was very curious about how the famous General Asthetha looked like. After the night raid all left, the contractors began to discuss. How do you think what will happen to this action? I don't know, Taigo in the Akame Ga kill world is too dangerous. I am not prepared to fight against them, especially the horrible woman in the Empire camp. Try to protect the power of the night raid, so that the rate of winning will be higher in the final battle. As for the key, it can only depend on our abilities. The contractors nodded to agree. A contractor sitting in the corner had not spoken, just playing the tarot cards in his hands. The friend there, don't you discuss countermeasures with us? Ivan smiled and walked forward, which looked like a leader of the contractors. There is nothing to discuss. Compared to solving the power of the imperial capital, I would like to kill you first. I am not targeting anyone. I just want to say that everyone present is trash. The tarot card flew, the man sitting in the corner raised his arm. At this time, a tattoo appeared on his backhand. It was a black number 11. All the contractors were horrified when they saw this tattoo of a black number, they seemed to see a beast. Brigade, ah! The screams came, the night raid that had left was not aware of it. Didn't know when there was a layer of enchantment around the room. 3 minutes later, the man playing the tarot card on his hand walked out of the room. The other contractors in the room had disappeared without a trace, there was no blood on the ground. Imperial Capital, the block of the central street. The streets were bustling, crowds walked through the central street, there were all kinds of shops on the street. A woman with a blue hair sat on the seat near the street, a woman enjoyed an ice cream in her hand. "Don't you eat? This thing tastes very good." The woman was Esteth, she walked alone on the street today as bait and wanted to attract members of the night raid. No answer appeared, Esteth glanced around. "You're so distant, I've been hanging around for a morning, no one will come." Esteth found that no one answered her, but she could not perceive his position as well, and she could only give up. In the distance, a robust figure jumped across the roof, she was Leonie who had already become a beast. Leonie became a woman with yellow hair and beast ears after using Taigu, a pair of the furry beast ear made her look very cute. Shhh. Leonie jumped on a roof and limited her breath, then looked down. Is she Esteth? Leonie, who was originally confident, bit her teeth tightly, she seemed to see terrible creatures. This feeling, the killing is so dense that makes me numb, I am too naive, I surprisingly want to assassinate this kind of person. Leonie was very sensitive after transforming to the beast, she decided to retreat, she has no desire to fight with this kind of enemy, if they fight, she will definitely die. Just as Leonie was preparing to retreat, a man with a long sword went to Esteth and said something to Esteth, after that the man looked in her direction. Leonie felt numb in her whole body at that moment, the horrible gaze made her unforgettable. Escape. She must escape immediately, or she will die. Leonie did not care about exposing, she stepped on the tiles of the roof, and fled in the opposite direction. Leonie, who was running away, still felt a palpitation, she seemed to be aimed. On the street, Susiao looked at Leonie, who fled far away, with no expression on his face. She escaped. Esteth ate the ice cream in her hand and looked at Susiao. She can't escape. Susiao pulled out the dragon flash from the waist, he was going to meet the night raid to see their strengths. After killing the kitty, remember to support the 3 beasts, night raid seems to act now. Oh. Susiao's figure disappeared on the street. Chapter 213. In the forest in the imperial capital's countryside, a figure walked quickly through the trees. I can't escape from the direction of the headquarters. Otherwise, I will expose everyone. Leon's footsteps stopped, the 2 beasts moved, after distinguishing the direction, she ran to the swamps in the deep part of the forest. If you dare to come, then come, you monster. Leonie bit her silver teeth tightly, she had been running for 2 hours, but the sense of threat was still there. After Leonie ran out for 2 minutes, Susiao arrived at the location where Leonie was. He could only roughly perceive Leone's direction, Leonie ran away in a hurry, she had no time to cover up the traces. Judging from the footprints and broken branches, he could judge her specific position. After confirming the direction that Leonie went, Susiao quickly followed. He knew that the enemy had discovered him. Now they were in the relationship between prey and hunter. The final result depended on between the prey and a hunter, which one was more sophisticated. Gradually moving forward, Susiao felt that the air became wet and the smell of rotten vegetation in the forest was dense. The feeling under his feet was soft, Susiao stepped into a swamp. This is the swamp. Pulling his leg out of the mire, he became cautious. The swamp was a very dangerous place. The general swamp was okay. Even if he accidentally falls into it, he has a way to get out, but if it is mire, it will be dangerous. The kind of swamp could swallow people in less than 5 seconds. He struggled seriously, would die faster. Because the water contained a lot of mud, swimming in mire was also a delusion. No matter how skillful the survival master, after falling into the mire, he would attack himself to avoid the pain of suffocation. Some people may wonder why they go to the swamp even if they know how dangerous it is. If the swamp can be seen with the naked eye, it will not be dangerous. Most swamps have a layer of dry soil on the surface, which is formed by the sunlight. Sometimes the wind blew the leaves onto the swamp to form a natural trap. Su Xiao took a branch on the tree which was 5 or 6 meters long. The branch was roughly as thick as the arm. Holding the branch with one hand, Su Xiao did not pay attention to the swamp. If you traveled in a swamp, the best way is to find a long branch, so that if you fall into the swamp, you can grab it to get out of the swamp. Although it was a bit funny to hold a long branch in the left hand and a knife in the right hand, it was nothing compared to life. Under his foot was soft. Su Xiao's leg fell into the swamp. After stepping into the swamp, Su Xiao clearly felt the suction of the mud in the swamp. Dragon Flash was stabbed into the ground. Su Xiao leaned his body and pulled his legs out of the swamp, but his shoes stayed in the swamp forever. His right leg was covered with mud. Su Xiao looked unhappy. The enemy chose this battlefield was a bit shitty. Don't be caught by me, or I will throw you into the swamp to die. Continue to track the enemy's traces. After about half an hour, a row of footprints with mud came into his view. The enemy also fell into the swamp. She seemed to fell with her whole body. Su Xiao was happy in his mind. You also have this situation, he thought. After leaving a row of single footprints with mud, Su Xiao's feet felt soft again. With a snigger, Su Xiao's half-body was in the swamp. It was mire. Fuck. A minute later, Su Xiao struggled to get out of the swamp. His face looked not good. This time he would leave 2 rows of footprints with mud. The tracking continued. 10 minutes later, a red signal shell fired in front. Boom. The red signal shell exploded, leaving red dust in the air. Asking for help. Su Xiao quickly rushed to the direction of the signal shell was fired. He saw the enemy 2 minutes later, but he could not see the enemy's appearance. The enemy's whole body was covered with mud. Did I kill your relatives or friends? After meeting, Leone asked directly. No. Su Xiao threw away the wooden stick in his hand. If he responded cautiously, Leone couldn't make any troubles. He restrained Leone this type of close fight. Leone bit her sharp teeth tightly, which appeared after becoming the beast. Since I haven't killed your relatives and friends, why do you keep chasing me? We run around the imperial capital for 2 rounds, hundreds of kilometers away, just because I stared at you. Leone's pair of furry animal claws cracked. Her identity was not exposed in the imperial capital. She thought Su Xiao did not recognize her. Leone, the main member of Night Raid, Taigo is the K-Animal King. Lionel, was born in a slum. She stole for a living when she was a child. At the age of 14, she studied with an old monk of the Huangji temple. At the age of 16, she got the Taigo. At the age of 17, she joined the Revolutionary Army. At the age of 18, she became a member of the Night Raid through selection. Su Xiao smiled. What else do you want to know? Leone looked at Su Xiao with a stun. She even didn't remember some of the information. Before entering Akame Kill World, Su Xiao checked all the information he had searched before, not to mention the information, even if he was clear about Leone's BWH. In this case, we can only fight. Leone wiped the mud on her face. Her sight was like an angered lion. It's not that you die or I die, you must die. Oh, finally I can speak freely. Su Xiao was upset these 2 days. Although he was not talkative, after pretending an assassin, the sentences he said the most were okay, I know. After relaxing, Su Xiao stopped talking. The light blue arc was on the surface of the Dragon Flash. After strengthening the Dragon Flash, he hadn't fought with others with full power. He did not make any effort at that time with SDs. And he only cut 2 knives with the giant wolf. The two did not show the sharpness of the dragon flash. The blade screamed, Su Xiao stepped on the ground under his feet, the withered leaves on the ground splashed. In less than 2 seconds, he had appeared in front of Leone. Su Xiao's agile attribute was 24 points. This speed was not fast in Leone's sight after she became the beast, but Su Xiao did not rely on speed and strength to deal with strong enemies. He was better at using skill, and knife kills to battle. Strength and agility was the foundation. The long sword broke the air, the blue light flowed. Leone subconsciously attacked the long sword with her hands, which was the way she used to. Leone, who became a beast, her claws became very hard, even if some Taigo could not break it. The sound of breaking the air came, the sharp edge of the dragon flash seemed to cut through the air. When the claws were about to close with dragon flash, Leone felt a prickle front the claws. The instinct of the beast told her that she might have to lose the furry hand if she continued. But now it was too late to go back, Leone could only keep defending. When the dragon flash's blade touched Leone's claw, the hardened film of Leone's claws was suddenly cut through the two contacted. Pucci. The red blood floated in the air, the half of the furry hands was conspicuous in the blood. The half hand landed with a crack. Leone took a few steps back while holding the broken palm. How can it be so sharp? Pap, pap. Blood dripped on the withered leaves, the forest was quiet. Chapter 214. It's too weak, it seems that the plan had to make some changes. Su Xiao spoke, he had previously wanted to use the night raid to delay the assassination of the empire. But from the combat power that Leone performed, in addition to Akame, even if others fight Estes together, they may not win. He would not judge the development from the original plot after a lot of contractors entered the derivative world. It would be stupid to follow the original plot to work, such as the former cold fish. The plot of the Titan world and the Ghouls world had been stirred up by Su Xiao. After he entered the derivative world, this would be a brand new world, the butterfly effect would embody directly. The Taigo is good, I got it. Su Xiao rushed to Leone. Leone condemned in mind, where did the powerful monster emerge? Meaning, the lion will never die. Leone screamed, the degree of animalization increased significantly, her blonde hair became longer, and the claws became sharper. Unexpected things happened, Leone's half hand that was cut off was gradually regenerating. When Leone used the skill, Su Xiao had already rushed to the front of Leone. The long sword cut from top to bottom. Pucci. Blood surged, a lot of blood poured out from Leone's chest, splashing in front of Su Xiao, blood was constantly out of shape. This sword cut on Leone's chest, the wound spread from the shoulder to the waist. Leone only wore a bra, this attack directly made her naked. After a sword cut out, Su Xiao did not stop, the second sword was ready to cut down. Leone was not weak. After using the ultimate, power suddenly grew a lot. Go to hell. Leone hit a straight fist to Su Xiao's face, the wind pressure came to the face. If he was hit by this punch, he would have almost died. Huh. The first wind was close to Su Xiao's ear, his hair was blown up by the wind. She did not attack him, Leone subconsciously took back her fist, but Su Xiao would not let her easily retreat. The long sword cut in front, a cold light reflected into Leone's sight. Pucci. After that, her arm was numb, Leonard could no longer feel her right arm. A white arm flew up, one attack cut an arm, Leone's physical defense was weak in front of the dragon flash. After a few steps back, Leone stopped bleeding at the position of the broken arm, but there was no sign of regeneration. Su Xiao looked at Leone and roughly understood the ability of lion never to die. Small parts of the broken limb could be regenerated, but the broken legs or arms could not be regenerated, but the recovery ability was greatly improved. For example, the wound in Leone's chest, at this time, it had been sealed and stopped bleeding, it could be healed in a few minutes. Suxiao took out the Hawana's eyes to detect Leon's properties. Hawana's eyes floated in the air, the red light rushed out to wrap Leone and began to detect her. Comparing the intelligence properties of both parties, the comparison is completed. Hunter's intelligence is 2.4 times higher than the enemy's data will be obtained. The information was as follows. Name, Leone, in the status of Lion King. Health, 72%. Mana value, 21/100. Strength, 30. Agility, 26. Vitality, 28. Intelligence, 10. Charm, 12. Skill 1, Lion King, active after using it, the user will turn into a lion, power plus 15, agility plus 8, vitality plus 10, reduce 80% injuries. Skill 2, Beast Instinct, passive, the ability of sense of smell, hearing, and perception is greatly improved, this will be activated passively when using the Lion King. Skill 3, the lion will never die, active. After using it, it will greatly improve the resilience and restore a small part of a severed limb. Skill 4, Stealing LV.4, active, stealing items without others' awareness. Skill 5, Close Combat LV.6, passive, improve close fight skills. From attributes, Leone was stronger than Suxiao. The attribute was very important to Suxiao, that was the basis of everything, but the high attribute did not mean strength. Suxiao's sword specialization was LV.11, skills such as Qinggang Yin, Heart Eye, and Extreme Blade would enhance combat effectiveness. Although his attributes were not stronger than her, Suxiao's skill ability was stronger. Only knife specialization of LV.11 Leone's fighting technique could not be compared with him. After reading the information of Leone, Suxiao was ready to end the battle. He had been guarding against the enemy just in case she had another skill. The one-sided battle began. Leone would not die in a short time with super strong resilience, but she often on the edge of death. Crack! An old tree which was half-meter thick was cut off, the broken part was as smooth as the mirror. After Leone saw this scene, her pupils shrank to like a needle. If the sword was on the neck, it would be her head falling down instead of the tree. The old tree fell to the ground, and a lot of withered leaves were blown up. 3 minutes later, the crossing scars appeared on Leone's body. She had already forgotten how many times she was cut. Each wound was deep to the bone, and a piece of her furry ears was smashed. Huh! Leone gasped heavily. She had become a blood man. A small piece of blood under her feet was seen in less than 3 seconds. Finally, come! Leone's body fell softly. Even if her resilience was strong, she could not bear the wounds. Leone did not fall directly to the ground, her body stopped in the air like a puppet. Suxiao frowned, he did not perceive any abnormality around him. Shhhh. The rush of wire shrinkage came. Leone's body was quickly dragged to far distance. This is dimensional formation, Shambhala. Suxiao quickly chased Leone. She had no power to fight, only one attack and he could kill her. Dimensional formation, Shambhala was a kind of taiga. The user named Lubbock was a member of the night raid. Dimensional formation, Shambhala belonged to the item taiga. The whole was a bobbin. The bobbin was wrapped with super dangerous species body hair. The strength of the body hair exceeded all known metals. The user could flexibly manipulate the body hair of these dangerous species. I say that it's the body hair. Dimensional formation, Shambhala was more like a high-strength nichrome wire. It contained softness, sharpness, and strength. Suxiao, who was chasing, was puzzled. How did Lubbock arrange these silk threads? He didn't even notice it. An idea suddenly appeared in his mind. This silk thread could make hind the perception. This is, after all, a super dangerous body's organization. It was not surprising to have this ability. Suxiao was shocked to think of this. At this time, a feeling made his flesh creep appeared. If he keeps going, he will die. Su Xiao's footsteps stopped suddenly, an unnoticeable cold light flashed a few centimeters in front of him. He checked by the dragon flash. Ding! A slight crisp sound came. There was a silk thread that was extremely difficult to detect in front of him. If he hit the silk thread at speed just now, this sharp line would cut off his neck. Obviously, Lubbock accurately calculated Su Xiao's height, running speed, and the direction he chased. According to Su Xiao's understanding, it was not surprising that Lubbock had such intelligence. Leone had disappeared in his perception. Su Xiao gave up the meaningless pursuit, understanding the general strength of the night raid was enough. There were some enemies waiting for him. Chapter 215. Outside the forest, next to a small stream, a handsome young man with green hair and a green trench coat opened his eyes. He surprisingly detected the line. What a terrible perception! Lubbock began to take back the silk threads. After pulling back Leone, who was covered with the knife marks all over her body, Lubbock was angry. This bastard! After discovering that Leona's upper body was already naked, Lubbock quickly took off his trench coat. Although he usually showed hornily, he would never take advantage of Leone at this time. This kind of bleeding, it is not good. Lubbock, who did not understand medical skills, was anxious, but he had no choice. No, nothing. Leone woke up. The resilience of Taigo Lion King was not for decorations. Leone, big sister, you. Seeing Lubbock was anxious, Leone smiled. It's already lucky to be alive after losing an arm under the man's sword. Leone raised the arm that was cut off. Now there was only a small piece left on her arm. How can I forget such an important thing? We are a combination of being alive after big trouble. Lubbock picked up the broken arm on the side. This was what he took back with the silk thread. Dimensional formation. Shambhala could control the silk thread to suture the broken arm. With Leone, recovery ability was a perfect combination. The injury of a broken arm and a broken leg could fully recoverable. You're indeed my good partner. Leone smiled reluctantly. She remembered the previous battle. She was like a brainless beast. She was unable to fight back under the sharp sword. After helping Leone to suture the cut off an arm, Lubbock got up. Big sister, you take a break for a while. The bastard hurts you so much. I have to go to meet him. The smile on Lubbock's face was to comfort Leone, but in fact, he was furious in his mind. But Lubbock felt that his pants were caught. Big sister. Don't go, you will die. It doesn't matter if I was heavily injured. Just, I beg you, don't go, don't go. The man tracked me for several kilometers. No matter how you escape, you couldn't escape. You will be done after being locked. It was completely desperate. Lubbock lowered his head. But unless all of our members besiege him, we can't win without paying a heavy price. Leone grabbed Lubbock's pants tightly. I know. In Lubbock's mind, he was unwilling, but he could not leave under Leone's petition. Where is Akame? Is not she in a team with you? We found your signal and then moved separately. She went to support Bullet. They met an enemy. Estetha subordinates the three beasts. That's it? Then I can be relieved. Leone suddenly thought of something, and she struggled to sit up under the pain. I met the man when I was looking for Estetha. The man had said something to Estetha. It shows that the man has a relationship with Estetha. The three beasts are Estetha's men, so this action was directed by Estetha. Leone thought fast in her mind, but someone thought faster than her. Is that guy an Estetha subordinate? If all these are ordered by Estetha, then will he support the side of the luxury cruise? It's not very likely, he will be. Lubbock and Leone look at each other. How many people we have on the luxury cruise of the Imperial Capital's port? Leone looked at Lubbock. There are Bullet, Tatsumai, Akame, and mine. Mine also went. Well, the boss is worried, so she asked more people. With mine's long-range support, it should be fine. Leonie still was worried and wanted to stand up. Hey, hello, big sister, don't act recklessly. It's not too far from the headquarters. I will send you back to the headquarters and go to support. Lubbock tried to stop her but was pushed away by Leonie. Don't let me be a drag on you, I know my physical state. Support you is impossible. If I go there, I will only be a drag to you. You will go to support them immediately. I can return to the headquarters alone. Lubbock nodded after thinking for a few seconds. If he refuses again, it will be insulting Leonie. I know, this is a signal. If the retreat is not going smoothly, you must ask for help. Well, I won't do what I can't do. Lubbock left and turned back in 3 steps. After Lubbock left, Leonie slammed into the ground. With the sound of a, Leonie spat out blood. Lifting the trembling hand, Leonie saw a light blue arc flashing in the wound of the palm. What the hell is this? Electricity. The pain from all over the body made Leonie almost faint again. Leonie climbed on the tree with her claws and gasped heavily on the trunk. The energy of Qingangyan was not good to deal with. If Leonie dares to dismiss the Lion King state, she will definitely be chilling to let she doubt her life. A port outside the imperial capital, a giant luxury cruise gradually pulled into the shore. The luxury cruise had been in a mess. The bodies of the 3 beasts were lined up. Tatsumai was supporting injured Bullet with his hand. It finally pulls into the shore. Fortunately, we have support from mine. Otherwise, we will be dangerous. Bullet almost died, breathed a sigh of relief. The man who had died in the original book survived this battle because of the support of his teammates. Mine was a dynamic girl with a pair of pink pigtails. Her pink dress was very eye-catching. It could be seen from the clothes that mine was not a close fighter, she was a sniper and gunner. Yes, she was the sniper and gunner. Her taigo was somewhat special. Roman artillery, pumpkin, the gun-shaped taigo, it could not fire a physical bullet, but transporting the spiritual energy into an impact, it set an impact. In Su Xiao's view, it was more like a laser. The more dangerous the user's situation is, the stronger the power of Roman artillery, pumpkin had. If she is closed by the enemy, Roman artillery, pumpkin was not the gun, but a cannon, a laser cannon. It could continue to fire and sweep it horizontally. With the support of mine's Roman artillery, pumpkin, Bullet solved the 3 beasts with the strength of Taigo and his own power. Although there were strengths and weaknesses between Taigo, the strength of the Taigo users also represented how the extent that Taigo could be used. The luxury cruise slowly pulled into the shore. Akame and mine, who was waiting for a long time on the shore, came to meet them. The firepower is in time, mine. Bullet, who escaped from the death, smiled. Although his body was strong, he had the feeling of being gay. Leonie always suspected that Bullet was gay. It's still, okay, I am a genius for shooting. Mine's body trembled. Bullet's smile made her shoulders shake. Have you collected Taigo? Akame spoke. Akame was a girl with black long straight hair. Her red eyes were the origin of her name Akame. Although Akame was a killer, she was usually silly and cute. The collection is complete, a total of 3, the harvest this time is not small. Then let's withdraw quickly. Just now, Lubbock came to the news that some enemies will soon come. They walked toward the port. You take away Taigo after killing, they want to go, it's not good, right? A figure came from outside the port. The person came with a sword, the blade was straight, there was blood on it. Su Xiao glanced at the few people present. He quickly locked in Akame. This was the opponent he was about to fight. Others were either injured or remote fighter or were not strong. Chapter 216. In Akame Ga Kill world, there were few people that Su Xiao wanted to fight with the most, namely, Death, Akame, and Kurome. The 3 all had strong sword skills. Fighting with masters with the same fighting style could make his sword skills grow faster. Dragon flash in his hand waved fabulously. Suxiao walked slowly to Akame and others. Mine, keep the distance to cover me, Tatsumai, Bullet first withdraw. Akame spoke and slowly walked to Suxiao. Mine did not hesitate to run for a distance. Tatsumai somewhat hesitated, but after seeing Bullet who seriously injured, he decided to leave first. After Suxiao noticed the few people's actions, he had a black grenade in his hand. High-strength bomb, white, Suxiao got this from the ghoul's world, he had never used it. After the ring of the bomb was pulled out and thrown to a few people, Suxiao immediately held the ear by one hand and closed his eyes. Boom! A boom came. The power of the bomb was not big, but it would produce strong light, loud noise, high-strength infrasonic. The strong light could cause the enemies blind for a short period. The loud noise could make the enemy have ringing in his ears, and the high-strength infrasonic would interfere with the enemy's nervous system. Akame and others obviously don't know what bomb was, except for Mine in the distance. Other people were influenced. Akame was struggled to stand. She put Murasame in front of her to avoid being attacked. At this time, Akame saw a lot of after images and had ringing in her ears. A top-heavy feeling came. Puchi. Boom. The sound of the limbs being cut off and the gunshots came at the same time. Brother, brother. It was Tatsumai's voice. Akame was very anxious in her mind. What happened exactly? When Akame's sight became clear, the scene she saw made her angry in her mind, but she just looked down with no expressions. Bullet's arm, along with the majority of his shoulder, was cut off. Tatsumai's chest had a deep scar, which was so deep that his bones could be seen. If Mine did not fire strongly to cover them, the two would have already died under the sword attack. Ruin. Akame rushed up with a low roar. Suxiao was highly concentrated. The Taigua one-cut killer, Murasame, that Akame had, was said to kill by one attack. Suxiao did not know whether this killing by one attack would be effective to the contractors. Judging from the original plot, Murasame's poison was effective on his death, so it would be likely to be effective on him. He could not be injured, even if a slight flesh wound. Suxiao held Dragon Flash tightly. He walked to Akame. After the two men were close to each other, they did not talk nonsense. Every attack was aimed at each other's vital part. Crack, crack, crack. There was a piece of sword net in front of the two. The bright knife light crossed, the blade crashed, sparkles splattered, the tragic close fight started. Ding. Blocking the attack from Akame, Dragon Flash in Suxiao's hand moved to the side and led the Murasame to the side. Crack. The blades against each other and the sharp sound passed far. Akame's combat experience was very rich. She immediately took a step back and cut towards Suxiao with the sword held by both hands. Ding. This attack could be said as huge power. Suxiao blocked with Dragon Flash in front, and avoid this attack firmly. After the initial fighting, Suxiao felt that Akame's physical quality was similar to him. Her combat experience was very rich, but her sword skill was weaker than him. Qingangyan opened, the light blue arc surged around the surface of Dragon Flash. Electricity. Akame found that this situation and immediately retreated. Electricity could be conducted. After retreating for a few steps, Akame found her arm was not numb. It's not electricity. Akame rushed forward again. Ding, ding, ding. The two both had nice sword skills, so the time of battle would not last long and would have a result soon. The Dragon Flash in his hand cut in high speed. Suxiao's pupil gradually shrank. He was looking for Akame's flaws. Murasame cut through the side of Suxiao's body. The sharp blade was swept over his shoulder closely. If he was reckless, he would have died. Nothing was more exciting than this. The feeling of fighting with the enemy in person was completely different from seeing through the animation. The enemy's sword cut through with whistling sound, the pace under the feet during the fight, the gradual consumption of energy. The feeling of holding dragon flash in hand and the vibration when the swords collided. The fight continued, but at this point, a feeling of being aimed at appeared. It was mine. Susiao slashed to suppress Akame with full power and turned his back to kick on Akame's soft abdomen. Boom. Akame put Murasame in front horizontally, the feet were pulled out far away. She had a certain disagreeable feeling in her stomach, she was somewhat wanted to vomit. Shhh. An orange laser shot at Susiao's head, Susiao immediately turned his head, the orange laser swept across his ear, the scorching heat passed to his cheek. Susiao looked at mine in the distance. His first goal was her. But mine ran too far, he could only choose bullet helplessly. As for killing Akame at first, Susiao never thought about it. Not that he didn't want to kill her, he couldn't kill her. If Akame can't be so easily killed, she will not become the trump card of the night raid. And Susiao also had an idea which was compared with Tatsumai, Akame may be the real protagonist. Brother, are you okay? Tatsumai and Bullet sat not far away, both of them were seriously injured. Nothing, just an arm, Akame may not be able to hold on. Bullet spoke out a thing that made them surprised. How is it possible, these two people's powers are roughly the same? No, that guy is a little afraid of the Murasame. Now that he is used to it, Tatsumai, hold me up. Bullet barely stood up and took out a small syringe in his clothes. What is this? Brother? A stimulant. Bullet injected the stimulant into his body and tore off the clothes which wrapped the wound on the shoulder carelessly. Demon armor, Incursio. A short sword was inserted to the ground, Bullet was wrapped in an iron-gray armor suddenly, which was full-body armor. A long gun appeared in Bullet's hands, Bullet's footsteps became stable. Brother, you. The drug works, I can probably fight for 5 minutes. The slab under Bullet's feet broke, and Bullet rushed to them. Ding. Akame blocked Susiao's sword, there was a sword came from her arm. The enemy's sword skill was stronger than hers. Akame discovered this very early. A tall figure rushed into the battle. One arm with a long spear, he swept the long spear to force Susiao to retreat. Bullet. You. Nothing, I can support you for 5 minutes. It is not a problem to solve the enemy in front of mine's power. You used that kind of medicine. Yep. Akame's eyes became dim, the stimulant would cause irreversible damage to the body and greatly reduced his life. Don't care about these, my current combat power is only half of what I used to be, now I can only cover you. Bullet and Akame greeted each other and rushed to Susiao. At the same time, facing Akame and Bullet, Susiao also felt pressure, not to mention there was mine in distant. I can only use that. Susiao took a deep breath, the blue light flashed on Dragon Flash in his hand, the mana values reduced at a rate of 30 points per second. Holding the sword with one hand to meet the enemy, Susiao's muscles of the right arm slightly rose. Akame, let's retreat. Bullet immediately noticed that the situation was wrong, the pose of rushing forward stopped immediately, even if they were close to Susiao. The feeling that Susiao gave Bullet now was sharp to the extreme, it seemed that any defense would be meaningless under this sword. Bullet subconsciously blocked in front of Akame and raised the long spear in his hand. Crack. The long sword cut down, a blue light shadow still stopped in the air, Susiao jumped back. Bullet, are you okay? Crap. A body that had been smashed from the upper body into 2 sections fell to the ground, the blood was poured out at this time. The first one. Susiao looked at Akame, this was the second one. Chapter 217. You killed Bullet. Bullet is a key figure in the plot, gaining 3.6% of the source of the world, and now you have a total of 8.3% of the source of the world. Your talent Psychic is activated, permanently adding 15 points of mana values, and the current mana values are 517 points. Bullet brother. Tatsumai was struggled to get up and rushed to Bullet's body after screaming. He just ran after a few steps. Tatsumai was stopped by one person. Calm down, Tatsumai. The voice of Akame was somewhat low. Although the companion was dead in front of her, the enemy was still there. Even if she was angry, she must remain calm. How can I be calm? Tatsumai struggled hard and the blood on his body stained on Akame's sleeves. Calm down, Tatsumai. Akame's voice became serious. If Tatsumai rushes forward this time, he will be looking for death. Susiao picked up the key that Bullet fell. The two had no hatred. Bullet injected the stimulant under injuries to cover companion. He was a respectable opponent. The two were just in different positions. Even if he does not kill him, he will also kill Susiao. The Empire and the Revolutionary Army were deadly enemies. This could not be solved by negotiation. Between killing people or being killed, Susiao chose to kill people. He was not a saint. Any hostile creatures provoked him, he would treat them with the sharp sword in his hand. Bullet's strength was not weak, so he dropped a blue treasure chest. There are 3 taigo in the package behind Bullet. He took all away. When these taigas in his hands, even if they were in the terminal, he would have never done the stupid things like handing it to the Empire. The battle was still going on. Even if he wants to leave, the night raid will not agree. Tatsumai, have you calmed down? Akame supported Tatsumai. Yes. Tatsumai looked down. This is the first time he experienced his companion died after joining the night raid. At this time, Tatsumai was still somewhat naive. He believed that the night raid was fighting for justice. The night raid was the assassination of the Revolutionary Army. They did those dirty and tiring works. How could they not die? The Revolutionary Army was indeed good, but the night raid must be evil. Although the members of them all believed in the justice, the assassination was the assassination. The duty of the assassination was to help the country kill people. No matter how the people they killed evil, they were still killing people. Contacting boss with this, tell them we need support. We may encounter a guy who is as scary as a Steth. Akame gave the intercom to Tatsumai. Tatsumai nodded listlessly. Although it is a bit naive to say this, the hatred of my companions must be paid back today. Akame held the sword with both hands and stood opposite Susiao. If you can kill me then come. I have the consciousness of being killed when I take the sword to cut others. Susiao never thought that he was a good person. He knew that he was a rascal. He could kill others. Others could kill him as well, but it depended on who was stronger. Susiao and Akame rushed toward each other at the same time. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of weapons collided came incessantly. The long knife smashed out silver silk threads in front. The sparkles splashed. Susiao's strategy was the main attack. He highly concentrated on capturing the enemy's flaws at any time, and Akame was work for the passive defense. When Susiao made mistakes, she would cut a knife. The enemy's tiny mistakes would be Akame's opportunity to kill the enemy. Murasame's ability was so shameless. Mine in the distance did not continue shooting. She understood that it was more useful to distract the enemy than shooting indiscriminately. Murasame cut in front. Susiao attitudinized to put Dragon Flash in front of him horizontally. Ding. The anti-vibration passed from the handle to the palm. Susiao did not defend with full force. Instead, he shifted the blade downward along with Akame's attack. Akame prepared for receiving the anti-vibration from the collision of weapons. She had begun to make powers in her hands. What Akame did not expect was that her knife continued cutting down surprisingly. This sudden change made Akame stand unstably. The posture she had been made deformed. The body staggered forward for a few steps. This was the gap between the sword skills. The master fought. Any slight deviation was fatal, not to mention staggering for a few steps forward. Susiao accurately seized the opportunity. he first decided to be as far as possible away from Murasame. He did not want to fail miserably in a very easy task. And put Dragon Flash on the left side horizontally to defend the possible attacks that Akame would use. Susiao's body lowered down, the right leg swept Akame's side calf. Boom! Akame immediately felt the pain from the side of her left calf, her entire left leg was numb. Susiao's attack did not end here. His body leaned forward, he was almost close to Akame's body, just like the couple hugged each other. But Susiao, the gentleman, was a bit rude, he lifted his knees to slam into Akame's lower abdomen. Boom! Akame's body uncontrollably bent, and spat out the gastric acid, her sights became black. At this point, Akame knew it was finished, she may never have the chance to fight back, she would even die. It was as same as Akame's imagination. After Akame's body bent forward, Susiao's left arm raised, his elbow slammed down with full strength. Boom! His elbow's hard bone slammed on Akame's back rib. After her chest was attacked, there was a dull sound came. This time, what Akame spat out was not the gastric acid, but red blood. Her back ribs behind were broken, Akame could feel it. This terrible three combo attacks made Akame unable to control her body and slammed down to the ground. It was not only the sword that could kill people. After being close, Susiao's whole body was a weapon. Akame fell down. Susiao would not miss this kind of great opportunity, he would not talk nonsense after the enemy fell to the ground, he usually directly cut with a sword. If he wants to talk something, he will talk to the enemy's body. Susiao stared at Akame's white neck, but she was very smart. She left Murasame behind her, just in case her head would not be attacked. From this point, we could see how rich Akame's fighting experience was. Only hesitated less than a second, Susiao changed to stab from the cut, he stabbed to Akame's head directly. Ding! The long sword was deeply inserted into the ground, Dragon Flash stabbed along Akame's cheeks, the blade cut out a wound on Akame's cheeks. For a moment of life or death situation, Akame broke out with a terrible desire to survive. Time was no more left, Susiao felt that Mine's attack from a distance was coming soon. He decisively gave up to cut her head, Susiao's second sword stabbed to the trunk which was a larger part, Akame was absolutely unable to escape. Puchi! Dragon Flash cut through Akame's left chest and even inserted into the ground. This was where the heart was. Susiao had killed many people and was good at judging the position of the heart. Although Akame was beautiful, the purpose of the two was to kill each other in any way, without cards in their sleeves. Akame's body twitched, her eyes gradually dimmed. The way that Susiao held his sword changed from one hand to both hands, the long knife cut sideways so that Akame's heart could be completely cut through. Puchi! Blood surged. Tatsumai and Mine saw this scene, both of them were a little stunned, their pupils gradually constricted, they seemed to be unable to believe what happened in front of them. How can this be possible? Tatsumai murmured stupidly. A hot orange laser aimed at Susiao's chest, but Susiao could only escape helplessly. The second one had been solved, now he only needed to complete the finishing touches. Mine began to shoot at Susiao madly, he tried his best to avoid it. This kind of shooting in his perception could not injure him. He shook the blood on the blade, Susiao waited for Akame to die while escaping the shooting. Her heart was pierced, but she would not die immediately. The character died immediately after his heart was pierced in the movie was fake. After the heart was pierced, the blood circulation function would be destroyed. Because the oxygen in the blood could not be transmitted to all parts of the body, people would suffer from shock and die in short time, which was from 10 seconds to a few minutes, this depended on the size of the wound in the heart. 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds. 10 seconds later, Akame stood up surprisingly, Susiao was shocked. Was this the ability of Murasame? No, he had studied the sword Murasame in detail. Although this knife had a way to make people temporarily stronger, it could not immune death. Akame held the wound on the left chest and breathed the air heavily, which was clearly recovering strength. This is, her heart is on the right side. Susiao was somewhat unbelievable. Some people had a heart on the right side, but the probability was 1 per million, or even 1 per tens of millions, which was less than the chance of winning money from the lottery. Susiao obviously hit the jackpot, but he was not happy. The enemy was not dead. Sure enough, the lucky protagonist could not die easily. The other people in the night raid in the original plot all died, or almost died, only Akame did not die. Chapter 218. Cough, cough. Akame leaned forward and coughed and spat out blood incessantly. The severe pain from the energy of the body being burned caused her to tremble, but Akame did not make any sound. Tatsumai in the distance wanted to rush forward to help, but when he had a movement to move, an orange laser entered the ground in front of his feet. The hole, which was as thick as the finger, appeared. The cyan smoke appeared. The meaning of mine was very obvious. Don't go for the death, the enemy that Akame could not fight head to head you could not even fight. The state of Akame was very pessimistic now. Her many parts of the bones in the body broke, and the chest was pierced. 9,7,3,7,9. Akame screamed out a serial number, which was obviously a sign. Tatsumai just joined the night raid and was not familiar with this sign, but mine understood. 3 orange lasers were shot to the front of Tatsumai. The 3 orange lasers gradually approached Tatsumai, which meant to retreat. Akame pulled the injured body and began to retreat gradually. Mine's firepower disappeared. Tatsumai also understood the general matter and began to retreat slowly. Akame stared at Susiao and looked forward that Susiao to chase her. Susiao looked at Akame. The next one was mine in the distance. Finally, he looked at Tatsumai. The 3 men retreated from 3 directions. He could only chase one person. Do they use this way helplessly? Susiao suddenly rushed to a person at full speed. His goal was Tatsumai. He did not believe that Akame would give up on rescuing him. Akame bit her silver teeth tightly. The enemy was 100 times more cunning than her imagination. She could only give up the original strategy. At this time, Tatsumai understood that he became a burden. After understanding this, Tatsumai's chest was like pressing by a big stone. His eyes were gradually firm. The boy gradually matured. Tatsumai looked at Susiao, who was rushing to him with a fast pace, and looked at the bottomless river in 3 meters away. He jumped. Tatsumai jumped into the river from the port, which needed a lot of courage. You had to know that Tatsumai's entire chest had been cut open. Even if he did not drown, he might die from a bacterial infection. Tatsumai fell into the water with a thump. What a courage, boy! Susiao's direction of running changed to mine's direction. In the distance, it was a thump again. Mine also jumped into the river. Although mine was not old, she was an experienced assassinator. Susiao's footsteps stopped. It wasted that these members of the night raid did not participate in scuba diving. As you wish. Susiao chased Akame this time. Akame turned to run after finding Tatsumai, and mine jumped into the river. She ran faster than the rabbit. If there is no blood along the way, Susiao will suspect whether the girl is injured. She ran too fast, and Akame knew the terrain of the emperor well. Susiao was somewhat hesitant on the way. He was thinking whether he should continue chasing. He had been chasing the enemy from the noon till now sunset. Today, he was not like fighting with the enemies but participating in the sports day. First marathon, chasing Leone. Then long jump in the swamp, jumping through visible swamps. He also served as an audience of the diving, seeing Tatsumai and mine to jump into the river. Now there was a new marathon again, chasing Akame. The direction that Akame escaped was the interior of the imperial capital. The environment inside the imperial capital was complex, which was more suitable for her to flee. Leone chose the forest was because of the influence of the Taigo Animal King, Lionel, the beast preferred nature. A bloody girl was running ahead, and a man with a sword chased after her. This scene scared the residents in the imperial city. Some residents notified the guards in the imperial capital. Of course, it was not allowed to chase and kill people in the imperial capital. A large number of guards set out. They did not stop Akame in front, but stopped Susiao in half an hour. "Stop, put your sword down, you murderer." A guard captain raised a gun with a strange shape. The guards in the imperial capital would have firearms. "I'm a member of the assassination unit to do my works." Susiao showed the identification of the assassination unit. "Boss, sorry." After Susiao showed the identification of the assassination unit, the attitude of the guard captain changed greatly. "I am chasing a member of Night Raid, immediately inform you, General Commander, blocking every exit of the imperial capital. She is an 18-year-old girl with a sword, black clothes, and has wounds on her body. Do not allow any suspicious people to enter or leave the imperial capital." "Yes, sir." The guard captain stood up straight and was already sweating all over his face. These guards were arrogant in front of the civilians, but they would become obedient sheep in front of the assassination unit. The assassination unit was generally managed by the royal family or individual generals. They had the right to do it now and fix it later. Even if they kill people in the street, people could only admit the truth. Their families were not even compensated. This was the imperial capital. The right was everything. People had the right could trample on others' dignity and minds. Such an empire was destroyed was no more reasonable. The guards in the imperial capital were quickly mobilized. The entrances and exits were blocked. It was not a trivial matter for the members of the Night Raid to sneak into the imperial capital. Walking into an alley, Susiao squatted and found a pool of blood on the ground. He put the finger on the blood was still warm. This showed that Akame just left. He was very close to Akame. There were some white clothes scattered around, which were stained with large pieces of blood. This should be Akame tore her clothes to wrap her wounds. Susiao chuckled. After stabbing Dragon Flash into Akame's chest, he cut out the wound obliquely. Although this kind of wound was not long, it is extremely difficult to bandage, not to mention that Akame was a woman. The injury to the chest was more difficult to bandage. Followed by the blood, Susiao chased her in the imperial capital. Akame was like a wounded reindeer ran in the imperial capital. "Let's me see how long you can persist after losing a lot of blood." Followed by the blood on the ground. After 20 minutes, Susiao found that the surrounding buildings were ruined, and he occasionally could see some drunken men on the street. Here was the slum, the most chaotic and poorest place in the imperial capital. If a beautiful woman dares to walk alone in the streets of a slum, she may be taken away, and the next day, she will appear in the red light street not far away. The extent of chaos here was far more than the imagination. The women were taken away was not the most terrible thing. The drunkards on the street were the poorest people. They may still sleep on the dirty street today, and lied on the bench tomorrow morning. What waiting for them was a crazy human experiment. Susiao walked through a dark alley first and came to a bustling street after a short time. At this time, the sky is dark. This street's key color was pink or red lights. The two sides of the street were mainly spire buildings with 2 or 3 floors. The roof was covered with glasses, several rounds or square lanterns hanging in front of the building. The gentle music was intertwined with the laughter on the street. Many men and women cuddled intimately together. On attic of the street side, he could see some women faintly with exposed clothes and slender pipes in their hands. These women looked at the pedestrians below and seemed to look for the sexy buddy tonight or the rich guy. Susiao came to the red light district of the imperial capital, which was the most bustling place in the slum. Susiao not only came to the red light district but also took the knife into the red light district. The blood on the clothes indicated that he had just murdered someone. This scared the guests of the red light district a lot. Several couples who cuddled together ran away. Su Xiao entered the red light district with a sword which affected the interests of some people. Some people could not see it without any action immediately. Chapter 219. A group of black men came forward. The front was a fat man whose face was oil, wearing luxurious clothes. "Who are you? Get out of the red light district quickly. Tell you that even if you have hatred, you can't do it here. Do you know it's whose business is? Get out immediately. It's really disappointing tonight. The shitty guards actually blocked the street, which was affecting my business." Fat man's attitude was arrogant. He pointed to Su Xiao's nose with fingers, his 10 fingers with a variety of rings. It seemed that he made a lot of money from women. The knife light flashed, a fat head flew up. If others are kind to Su Xiao will be polite to them. If others come up and point to his nose, he will let the person's head move. Ah! A scream of a woman came. "Assassination unit works, other people leave here." Those black men who were still laughing suddenly trembled. They were only the local ruffians of the slum, and the assassination unit was especially to kill people for the empire. The two were not able to compare. Yes, sir, we will leave immediately. Fast, run fast." Even if these local ruffians wear more luxurious clothes, a neat black suit could not change their nature of bullying the weak, fearing the strong. When the murder happened on the street, those whoremongers instantly left. They were here for fun, not for death. The bustling red light district became a ghost street in less than 2 minutes. Su Xiao searched for the blood on the streets, but the blood began to turn scarce. He gave up on searching for the blood. Su Xiao had a strange feeling previously, as if he could perceive Akame's position. It had to be known that there were many people in the red light district. It was very difficult to find Akame after she concealed herself. Akame was once the killer trained by the Empire's assassination unit. Her skill was very strong. Otherwise, Su Xiao would not pursue the blood to find her. Compared to Akame, Leonie was easy to find. Among many people, he was able to vaguely perceive Akame, as if something was in Akame's body. Don't think too much, he just fought with Akame. With constant pursuing, this feeling was getting stronger and stronger. He could still feel that the things that belonged to him in the Akame's body gradually dissipated. Su Xiao suddenly had a thought in his brain, the energy of Qing Gangyin. The energy of Qing Gangyin was transformed from the mana values through special methods. The mana values were from his body. The energy of Qing Gangyin was also the energy in his body. In the final analysis, this was his thing. It was normal to have a vague feeling. He stood on the street and closed his eyes. The panic fleeing and screams around were gradually ignored. Perception, the subtle to extreme perception. The building with 3 floors in 300 meters away, Akame was there. Su Xiao rushed to the building. There were a large number of executioners on the red light district. Although these people wore different clothes, they were all murderers and had seen blood. If ordinary people see this scene, their legs will feel like jellies. Su Xiao just looked at these regular enemies sideways. "Which assassination unit you stay? I am the minister's nephew, that is, the boss of the red light district. My friend, tell me where you are come from, just in case the family to hurt each other." The man was a middle-aged man with dark skin. The middle-aged man had a pair of cunning bird eyes. His bags under his eyes were very heavy. He obviously was squeezed out the body and mind by the debauchery life. 3. After hearing Su Xiao's answer, the minister's nephew changed his face. The third assassination unit was Asteta's direct assassination unit. "Haha, we're family, my name is Carlos. If you need women in the future, just come to find me. There are women with any body shape and any age." Carlos's attitude turned greatly, the gloom on his face had disappeared. "Now I have work to do, see you." Su Xiao walked quickly to the building where Akame stayed. Carlos saw the scene and felt heart-wrenching. "Wait." Su Xiao looked at Carlos sideways. "You can't check here, even a Death's assassination unit can't do this. Unless a Death comes, the red light district is the minister's business. I just here for running errands, don't make my troubles. Carlos's attitude was very determined. You want to prevent me from arresting the member of Night Raid. Carlos's arm, which took out, suddenly stopped. Even if he was the minister's nephew, he did not dare to stop arresting the members of the Night Raid. Moreover, he was only one of the 17 the minister's nephews. Brother, don't talk jokes. Carlos winked at the men behind him. A bag of gems soon appeared in Carlos's hand. Brother had helped us to maintain the peace of the red light district. It is the fee for the hard working. Carlos quietly handed a bag of gems which could let civilians live without worries for more than a few decades. Susiao took over the gems. It would cause more troubles without receiving it. This was actually the hush money. The scene in the room may not be good. Entering the 3-floor building, Susiao went straight to the innermost room of the first floor. The Qingganyan's energy in the Akame body had dissipated. He could only lock her position a minute ago. Although the identity of the assassination unit brought a lot of conveniences, there were also inconvenienced. Just like if Susiao does not have the identity of the assassination unit, he will not talk nonsense with Carlos. Before going to the front of the room, Susiao opened the door. A purple smoke floated out of the room. The smoke had a unique aroma. The psychedelic drugs, Susiao immediately judged it. Stopping to breathe and walking into the room, this was an empty room which was 200 meters long. There was nothing else in the room, only women sat on the floor, at least dozens of women. These women lied on the yellow floor with loose clothes and silly smiles on their faces. Using addictive, psychedelic drugs to control women was a common way in the red light district. Ha 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 ha. A woman who was not in a clear state hugged Susiao's leg, her body exposed, and the smile on her face was stupid. The purple smoke floated in the room made the sight blur. Akame may be mixed in these women. Open the window and turn on the light. Susiao observed around vigilantly. Carlos immediately let his men do it. The room was bright. The night wind blew the purple smoke away. Susiao stood in the same place with a knife. He was ready to face Akame, who was escaping suddenly. Fresh air was filled with the room. The women in the room gradually came to their senses. What is going on? Is time up? Ha, so fast, I haven't been comfortable enough. These women who were laughing sat up, and no one was listless. Get up, make a row. Carlos shouted. These women were very afraid of Carlos. They stood in a row direction. Susiao looked at these women's faces in turn. He couldn't just see if they had blood on their bodies. Akame could change to these women's clothes. Susiao, who was holding a sharp sword, obviously made these women a little scared. Their bodies shrank, and their heads lowered down. 5 minutes later, Susiao checked all these women's faces. He did not find Akame. This made him somewhat confused. Did Akame run away from the window? Looking at the 3 windows of the room, no abnormalities were found on the window. Susiao looked at the surrounding walls. You all get out. The women in the room went out incessantly, and Carlos's men also went out. Brother from the assassination unit, would you like to give up tonight? Can I find a woman for you to relax? Today is a new batch, absolutely clean. No need, you also can go. Carlos coughed with the embarrassment and turned to walk out of the room. He did not dare to offend Susiao. Carlos could become the boss of the red light district, indicating that he was a stupid person. After Susiao showed his identity, he never showed hostility. Susiao searched carefully in the room. Akame fled under his sight, which made him somewhat reluctant. Just as Susiao checked the room for more than 10 times and was about to give up, he suddenly found a faint red trace on skirting at the corner of the floor. The finger lightly tapped on the red trace. It was blood. Chapter 220. Susiao's eyes suddenly sharpened. Akame had definitely come here. He carefully checked the nearby walls, and there were no signs of being damaged. Su Xiao tapped the floor by Dragon Flash's handle. Dong, dong, dong. Under the floor was an empty space, judging from the sound that the space was not small. The Dragon Flash in the hands quickly reversed. Su Xiao directly stabbed down by backhand. It was not enough. Su Xiao pulled out the sword and stabbed for a few more times. Pulling out the Dragon Flash, he did not find the blood on the tip of the sword. Su Xiao slammed to the floor by his feet. With a crack, the floor caved in, revealing a hole. Inside the hole was dark. Taking out the strong flashlight and lightning downward, Su Xiao found that this was a tunnel. Akame definitely escaped from it. Can the guards of the Imperial capital be more stupid? Imperial capital has almost become Night Raid's nest. Su Xiao blamed with a low voice. Akame escaped into this kind of tunnel for the second time. It could be seen that the guards of the Imperial capital were so useless, they even did not find out there was a dug-out tunnel under their capital. Expanding the hole, Su Xiao turned and jumped into the tunnel. A moldy smell came. Su Xiao used the strong flashlight to lighten his way forward. There was only one way in the underground passage. The underground passage was not deep, probably 5 or 6 meters underground. From the tunnel's extent of damage, it should exist in very early years. The Night Raid accidentally discovered it. The whole tunnel was somewhat similar to the mine ground. The boards supported the soil horizons above and sides. You could see some metal frames sometime. If the metal frames do not support the tunnel, it may have already collapsed. The entire tunnel seemed like it will collapse at any time. It needed to take some courage to get into it. Although it looked shabby, the mechanics in the tunnel was perfect. Even if the boards were basically rotted, the tunnel would not collapse in a short time. After he was sure that the tunnel was firm, he began to move slowly. He gained something after pursuing Akame, and he developed an ability accidentally. After the energy of Qing Ganyin invaded the enemy's body, he could sense the enemy's position within a certain distance. The energy of Qing Ganyin was like a coordinate, and he was the only one who could perceive the coordinate. This ability was very good for pursuing people. As long as the enemy was injured, the enemy could not escape in a short time. The reason why he let Akame escape for such a long time this time was pure because Su Xiao was not familiar with Imperial capital's terrains. After traveling in the underground passage for a while, Su Xiao found a pool of blood on the ground. There was also the underwear near the blood. Looking at the left side of the underwear, there was a broken hole, and this underwear was left by Akame. He walked quickly in the tunnel. After about 10 minutes later, there was a crossroad in front of Su Xiao. There was no clue this time, and he needed to choose one of them. Choosing the right one, he could catch up with Akame, otherwise just miss the opportunity. People would subconsciously choose the right side when they were in front of the crossroad, which had clues. Most people used their right hand to write, and they would raise their right hand first when they wanted to do something. Su Xiao used the right hand to hold a sword after being habitat to do this for a long time, and people would habitually choose the right side. Anyway, it depended on the luck, and he chose the right side. After entering the right side of the crossroad, Su Xiao knew that it was a wrong choice after half an hour. This was a dead end. It was not that Su Xiao's inference was incorrect, but that Akame had come to this underground passage before. She had known that the right side was a dead end. The soil horizons collapsed, became an earth hummock. Su Xiao could only return. Just as he turned around, he vaguely saw a metallic color on the collapsed earth hummock. He tried to use the dragon flash to thorn that position. A crisp sound came. How could a metal door in this abandoned tunnel? Su Xiao had entered this road for half an hour, and even if he returns at full speed, it will take more than 10 minutes, Akame could run far away after more than 40 minutes. This metal door indeed made Su Xiao curious, and it was not just a curiosity. Some secret locations in the derivative worlds may have good things. Even some contractors sorted out these locations into a set of information. The price of the information was 15,000 paradise coins, which was called the Encyclopedia of the Secret Places. He took out a white quality shield from the storage space. Susiao used it as a shovel to start digging. He obtained this shield in the Titan world. It scored only 3, and it was damaged. The repairing cost was enough to buy a new one. It was that kind of item that it was useless but unable to give it up. A few minutes later, Susiao cleaned the soil in front of the metal door. The red rusty metal door appeared. A sign could be seen at the center of the metal door, which was the flag of the empire. The way to open this rusty metal door could only use brute force. Susiao held the knife with both hands and pooled all his power to cut it out. Ding! A huge reaction force came. Susiao's hands were a little numb because of it, but only a gap which was 2 centimeters deep appeared on the metal door. As Dragon Flash's sharpness now, it was not exaggerated to cut metal as cutting mud, but it did not work on this metal door. In the current situation, he needed to spend some efforts to cut open the metal door. This did not make Susiao disappointed. Instead of excited him. What did the door so strong mean? Of course, there were treasures inside. Killing Akame could get a treasure chest. Whether he could get a good thing after opening it depended on his luck. He was not really lucky though. But exploring this kind of secret places was different. The value of the item in the secret places was fixed. It did not depend on the luck. Just like the warehouse in One Piece world he got Dragon Flash, it was a small-sized secret place. There were still many this kind of examples. In the shaft of the underground central city of the 24th district in the Ghouls world, it was a medium-sized secret place, the basement of Aaron's house in the Titan world, which was also a small-sized secret place. Of course, the word secret place was created by the contractors. These places also could be called as treasure houses, but the word secret place was more widely known. Ding, ding, ding. Susiao began to compete with the metal door, and now Dragon Flash was extremely strong. This level of cutting would not damage its durability. An hour later, Susiao, who was sweating, leaned against the wall in the underground passage, drinking the water quickly. Today's experience could be called fantasy. From chasing the enemy to hunting the treasure, the change of the style was so fast that people felt stunned. Finally, he made efforts for a long time. The metal door was cut out and a hole which was barely able to let people enter appeared. The strong flashlight shined inside. Inside the metal, the door was a long corridor. The corridor was also a civil structure. The boards supported the surrounding mound. Susiao entered from the hole of the metal door. Unlike the turbid air in the tunnel, the air inside the metal door was much fresher. There should be exhaust orifices here, and people could stay for a long time. After entering the metal door, Susiao walked abnormally cautiously to explore the corridor. There was also a door at the end of the corridor, but it was a wooden door. Susiao directly kicked off it. Boom! The wood meal splashed, the wooden door was smashed, a small room appeared in his sight. Crack, crack. The sound of machines operating came. A green smoke blew out from the room. Warning, Hunter is eroded by caniate poison gas and suffers 5 points of the real damage per second. The prickly feeling came from all over his skins, and his eyes felt burning. Susiao quickly steps a few steps away from the scope of poison gas. He lightened the room with the flashlight. Susiao saw a metal test bench with test tubes and other objects on it. There was a skeleton in front of the test bench. There were not only a large number of experimental objects on the test bench, but also an item looked like parchment in the center. The parchment was about half a meter long, and the gorgeous purple light occasionally flashed on it. Susiao took a deep breath and rushed into the lab. When he stepped into the lab, Susiao's life value fell like a stream of water. He would die after at most 30 seconds. After rushing into the room, he grabbed the parchment and turned to run out of the room quickly. The prickly feeling came from all over the body. Susiao took out the restorative product energetic spring head and drank it directly. The prickly feeling of the body then disappeared. Huh, huh. Clenching the delicate parchment, Su Xiao gasped heavily. This time, I seem to earn a lot. Seeing the hint of the reincarnation paradise, Su Xiao looked happy. You got it, the blueprint of revising Taigu. The blueprint of revising Taigu. Origin, Akame Ga Kill. Quality, purple. Genre, drawing. Required items to compose.